I mean, what's pro football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on YouTube, 7 a.m. on a Monday, ready to go through all of the Week 15 NFL action, Sam.
Yeah, there's a lot of, variance in the voice there.
Yeah, you got to do a little voice inflection to pull the people in here.
It's beautiful.
Early on a 7 a.m. Monday morning show.
December 18th.
It's December 18th. Yeah,
it's almost Christmas.
It's Christmas week.
Christmas week.
It's Christmas week.
We got a big week.
We're going to have a show on Wednesday.
We're going to have a Christmas show on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we've got a show in the bag, essentially, tomorrow, most of it. I got to show up for 5 minutes, talk about the game, and then we pitch over to our canned interview, as they say.
Pre-canned.
In the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Christmas show on Wednesday.
Yeah, big week. And then we'll preview Week 16 on Thursday. Then we'll celebrate Christmas and the whole thing.
Then we're out. Easy.
Yeah, just a programming note. Next Monday, a week from today, at this very time, I will not be doing the podcast.
No.
Nor will you.
Excellent.
We're going to have Christmas morning with our children, and then we'll do the podcast on the 26th. So next week, the Week 16 review podcast will be coming at you on Tuesday the 26th, on Boxing Day, Sam.
Boxing Day.
And not on Christmas
Stevens
Day. Because we also have 3 days on Christmas, too. Because the NFL...
Games?
3 games. What did I say?
Days.
3 games on Christmas. Whatever. 3 games on Christmas. Because the NFL doesn't want us to have any time with our family.
No.
Whatsoever.
The supercomputer that does the schedule, this used to be done by a bunch of people and take weeks. Now it's done by Amazon and their, AWS and a giant Cray supercomputer, and it's the best schedule ever. Supercomputer doesn't have family.
Certainly does not. The supercomputer's secret power is their free time. If yes, at a football game.
Yes.
So that's where we are. So anyway, next Tuesday we will be doing the review show. All right, we ready to go here?
Yeah.
Gave people some time to get into the chat. So we got to start with...
Wow, look at that.
With Saturdays...
Nobody even knew you were doing that to them. Just suckered them right in.
Just giving them some time. Let's start with the Saturday triple header. Now, remember, got to be quick here. A lot of games to cover. Got to be quick. Full slate. Started Saturday at 1 o'clock. Cincinnati Bengals 27, Minnesota Vikings 24. Bengals moved to 8-6. Vikings fall to 7-7. This game went to overtime. It was one of the more exciting games you could expect. I know we keep joking about, hey, Jake Browning as a backup. Dude's playing some pretty good football. It was a little up and down in this game, but Browning has played great these last few weeks. But Jake Browning versus Nick Mullins, a game where both QBs were creating outside of structure and making some big plays, or giving their playmakers some opportunities to make big plays. A couple crazy interceptions from Nick Mullins, including one of the craziest of all time. Your thoughts here on this 27-24 Bengals victory on Saturday?
Absolutely one of the most remarkable interceptions the game has ever seen. Tries to just throw the ball blindly out of his grasp as he's on the way down and ends up throwing it right into the face of the guy trying to tackle him. That itself would have been quite remarkable if the ball just ricocheted from B.J. Hill's face mask into his hands. But it didn't just do that. It ricocheted face mask back into Nick Mullins' backside and then back into B.J. Hill's hands, and then he sort of spooned it upwards and had to dive and retrieve it again. So it ended up being like a butt pick, but from the quarterback point of view. We've had the butt pick before where it landed on the buttocks of Marshawn Lattimore and was intercepted by Marshawn Lattimore. This was one where a guy threw an interception off his own ass. You don't often see that.
You don't. I mean, if you've been with the PFF NFL podcast for at least 5 or 6 years, you remember the butt pick. Right. Matt Ryan threw it. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. This was a different one here for Jake.
This was very unfortunate as well, but self-inflicted.
It was. This was self-inflicted. So yeah, it was like I said, it was a really fun back and forth game. I mean, Nick Mullins.
I'd forgotten that this is the Nick Mullins revenge game.
To go with the Jake Browning revenge game.
Sorry, the Jake Browning revenge. That's who I meant. Yeah, Jake Browning revenge game. he was with the Vikings, in his first team in the NFL, like undrafted free agent, signed with Minnesota.
Yeah.
You see the video clip of him like, you never should have cut me.
I did. I have to say.
He's like the only person in the building that even remembers he was with the Vikings. Everyone else is just like, what?
Yeah.
He's mad at us? Why?
That's like me getting mad at the Brewers and the Giants and the Mariners. Like, imagine me being mad at the Mariners. I was there.
All the teams that cut you.
I was there for 40 days or so.
Yeah.
Like, eat that, Mariners. Look at me now.
You just there like Ray Finkel and Dan Marino, except with
Yeah.
like half the MLB.
I don't see any other Mariners podcasting about the NFL at 7 a.m. on a Monday for 2.5 hours. Huh? Look at me now, Mariners. I mean, in hindsight, had I known that Jake Browning had that level of spite,
Right.
had I known
That's
that
an
that
important
was
variable.
deep down in him, I would have predicted more greatness for him. And I think we're seeing that come out.
Certainly in this game, it's an important variable. Like, do you understand quite how much this means to that individual over there that nobody is thinking about? Like, this matters to him.
I apologize to Jake for not knowing his transaction history, but the same way Amon-Ra St. Brown has his list of the 15 receivers or whatever that were drafted ahead of him, does Jake Browning have a
31 other teams?
like this is the 15 times I shuttled back and forth between practice squad and the team. Like, I don't know what his history is.
I don't think he did much shuttling. I think it was just the Vikings had him for a while and then cut him.
Yeah.
And now he's with the Bengals.
It's a great story. Like, again, you never know how to go, I feel bad because I feel like if we were podcasting in 1999, I would be sitting here doubting Kurt Warner the entire season. Like, oh, he can't keep this up. He can't keep this up. He can't keep this up. And before you know it, it's like, I've got 42 touchdowns and an MVP and I'm going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know when to stop.
No, it's
You know?
I think that's a reasonable thing though. Like, we've seen it so many times. Like, 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, it's all kind of meaningless. Guys can have those runs and then a switch flips and they're back to being whoever the hell they were before that. On the other hand, at some point, every single player that comes out of nowhere and plays really well from the get-go is going to have that run, right? And at some point, you cross over between this is too small a sample size, it means nothing, to actually, you know what, it is for real. And I think the problem is a lot of people want to jump on that immediately, right? Like the Shouty Show thing, the 1 week, whatever the last thing we saw is, that's what we're going with today. Like, those guys will, they will always seem like they're first because they'll think that way with everything, right? Like, no matter who it was was amazing this week, therefore he's the next Kurt Warner. Like, yeah, but most people will therefore the next week be crappy and it's not real. But at some point there is that crossover line where actually this is legit, this isn't going away. And like, who knows where it is for Jake Browning, but he basically had one rough start. The very first game they threw him in there against Pittsburgh. Yep. And since then he's had 3 good games, one of which was outstanding. And even in this game, this was a weird one because he had
17-3 going into the fourth quarter, by the way.
Yes.
Because I want
big comeback, 14-point comeback. Like, the Vikings had this game in hand, and it was a big comeback. He also missed a touchdown early to Charlie Jones where he had a total coverage bust by the Vikings defense. Charlie Jones running free, and he just overthrew it, couldn't get it into his hand. So he had a bad interception in there as well. So he'd missed some throws, had a bad play, and then when spite was on the line late in the game, needing a 14-point comeback, he ends up getting it done.
Yeah, he hits T. Higgins in the back of the end zone for a 13-yard touchdown, and then they come back. Joe Mixon scores, so they make it. It goes to 17-17. But then this is what I'm saying. It goes back and forth. Nick Mullins leads the potential go-ahead, leads the go-ahead touchdown drive. Vikings go up 24-17, and then it's Browning to Higgins for 21 yards in the box score. But what an incredible play as Jake Browning throws basically a jump ball that looked like it was going to 2 defenders before T. Higgins reverses course, goes up and gets it, catches it, and extends for the 21-yard touchdown.
This weekend in particular seemed to be one where there were an awful lot of prayer balls thrown by quarterbacks that ended up turning into amazing plays because of the receiver at the other end. This was a great example of that. There were a few plays in this game where Browning kind of gets out of pressure and just heaves one up, and somebody goes to make a play. None more spectacular than this T. Higgins one. This was an all-time great play by T. Higgins. Now, maybe it's Saturday in week 15 in an NFL season. It's the situation isn't amazing, right? But in terms of what he actually did, and in the game situation, he goes up and absolutely mosses a guy who had position on that football, took it away from him, got his feet in, which is the first part that you don't even think about. He got 2 feet down on the sideline, which itself was notable. And then whilst falling over the sideline, one-handed just swings the ball back behind his back and extends it over the goal line. Like, you hear offensive players say, never extend the ball over the goal line because if you fumble it, it's a bad thing. He does it, like, backwards while falling out of bounds.
Unreal.
Absolutely ridiculous play to end up scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, it was an incredible play because he's got full body control and he already has great length and just used every inch of it on that play to tie the game, and then in overtime, Bengals get the game-winning field goal to win 27-24. So many playoff implications here. Bengals move to 8-6, one of 5 teams in the AFC now at 8-6, and Vikings fall to 7-7. Both still very much in the playoff mix, but this was for a Saturday afternoon at 1:00 game, pretty high leverage game. Right now, the Vikings at 7-7, tied with 2 other teams. They're the number 6 seed. Bengals also the number 6 seed in the AFC as of right now, with all of the tiebreakers. Good?
Yep.
All right, second game on Saturday. Let's get to that one first, and we'll talk about, we'll get through the rest of them. Indianapolis Colts 30, Pittsburgh Steelers 13. The Colts are also one of the 8-6 teams right now, but because of the Jags' loss on Sunday Night Football, we have a 3-way tie atop the AFC South right now, including the Colts. Colts, Texans, and Jags are all now 8-6.
Glorious.
The Jags are still technically in first due to all the tiebreakers. The Colts are the number 7 seed. Texans are the number 8 seed at 8-6. We are ready for 3 weeks of just craziness trying to unpack this playoff situation. But a big win for the Colts. It didn't start good at all. The Steelers got up 13-0 with blocked punts, setting up a short touchdown. But, man, this was it, man. The Colts just ran away with it after that.
Mm-hmm. We got Steve Kornacki on speed dial. Get him in here, break down the scenarios.
We should get him on the pod for one day to just rattle them all off.
Oh, God, really?
I think for maybe post-Christmas week, a good show would be us throwing – because I've joked about I should just read all the playoff scenarios as a show. But why would I do that when there's a guy who does that? So, like, we could just be like, we'll show up, pitch to Kornacki, let him go for an hour, and read off every scenario.
We could just leave and come back and then Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a reason that's a joke, you know? I don't know that would make great podcasting. No.
I have a new pet peeve, Sam, that I was tweeting through last night. The teams that we're talking about clinching in competition for the number 1 seed. Mm-hmm. Every social media team is just rolling out there. 49ers clinched graphics. Like, it's week 15. We know they're going to the playoffs. They're battling for the number 1 seed. No, we're celebrating the teams clinching the playoffs right here in week 15. The Ravens clinched a playoff spot last night. It's big news. It's big news.
Yeah. The ones that were...
We don't celebrate expected accomplishments, is what I like to say.
Okay, Roy Keane. The ones that are kind of annoying to me is where it's like Dallas gets wrecked, and then in the midst of other, games, clinch a playoff spot. And it's like, well, number 1, we knew that anyway. Like, of course they were making the playoffs. And number 2, they just got destroyed. It's not the time to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going on the rant right now. I'm just saying, a little pet peeve.
Okay.
Nice game by Gardner Minshew here. Another not so great game by Mitch Trubisky on the other side.
Awful
for the Steelers.
The word.
Kind of got benched at the end, I guess, by Mason Rudolph. For Mason Rudolph. I think Rudolph will end up having to start next week. I don't think Kenny Pickett's ready.
So Tomlin was sort of saying they've been asking about him. They've been asking about Pickett's timeline heading into this game, and he basically was like, "I'm not even thinking about that going into this game. Ask me after," type of thing. And then it was like after, it's like, well, what about now? So they were sort of saying there's a chance he can go this week, but it is probably a week of Mason Rudolph, which, it's Christmas. It's fitting. It should be Rudolph at Christmas. Frankly, even if Pickett was healthy, it should be Rudolph at Christmas.
Got to go with Rudolph.
Right.
I mean, who else is going to lead the Steelers through this darkness of a 3-game stretch, 3-game losing streak against bad teams?
Two
against bad teams.
And because of this game, Tomlin now needs to go 2-1 to finish the season to save his record of never having a losing season come what may.
What do they have here? They have
It's
to go
not easy. It's Cincinnati at home, then it's at Seattle, and then it's at Baltimore. They need 2 out of those 3 to go their way to save that record. This was ugly by the Steelers. Like, did you see that video of George Pickens? I mean, the lack of effort across the board from this Pittsburgh team, which, by the way, it's not like, you know, the Jets defense has had some plays this year where there's a lack of effort. You're like, I get it, you know? Their season went up in smoke after 4 snaps this year. It makes sense for that unit to be like, I'm done with this in week 15 when their offense stinks every single week, and to just be like, forget this. The Steelers are in playoff contention. Like, they are somehow in good standing despite the team not actually being that great. Why have they got players not giving 100% effort? Like, the kind of the way this receiver room in particular keeps losing heart and stopping playing. Like Deontay Johnson, George Pickens now, Chase Claypool before that. I mean, the whole thing obviously sort of goes back to Antonio Brown when he finally unspooled. But, like, it's amazing the group of players that they have that this seems to keep coming back with. I don't know if there was this idea that the Steelers can just draft any wide receiver and they come good. Like, if they actually specifically target these guys that are potential attitude problems, they should probably stop doing that, because it seems like it's actually starting to become a problem now.
Well, we had that listener before the season theorize. Was it like, is Tomlin reading these guys, or is he finding these guys first and like keeping them in line for a certain amount of time, and then you lose control?
But if part of the magic in this drafting strategy is, you know, we can target guys in the 2nd or 3rd round that other teams will be passing on because they're like a pain in the ass. Like, well, there's a reason they're a pain in the ass, or there's a reason other teams are passing on them, and you appear to be experiencing that at the moment. So while George Pickens is immeasurably talented, like, if you can't stop him going 5 minutes before he throws his toys out of the pram and, you know, goes off in a sulk on the sideline, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as problematic for me was the first interception by Mitchell Trubisky. I mentioned on social media the other day, like, I know that the Steelers were up 13-7. Trubisky basically throws a jump ball to George Pickens against a safety, right? To me, that's always not a good decision, but it's not a turnover-worthy play decision. Like, George Pickens should win that. And he gets bodied at the catch point by Nick Cross for an interception.
There's not a huge amount of difference between that and the T. Higgins catch, you know, where Jake Browning throws up a pair. Caleb Evans is in better position than the safety to go win that.
There's not. That is, for me, I don't know what we ended up grading the Browning throw, but for me, those are essentially 0 throws.
Right, they're comparable.
I joke about those being not 50-50 balls. They're about 20-80 balls historically. But if you have a Higgins, you have a Pickens, there's probably a higher, success rate. And so that ball should not turn into an interception more times than not, right? And it did. And so that's just as problematic for me as the George Pickens effort level.
Last year, George Pickens caught 68% of his contested catches, right? This year, it's 29%. Like, for a guy who is sort of billed as contested catch hero, spectacular catch guy, sideline wonder, not necessarily going to separate as well as some other receivers, you cannot catch 29% of your contested targets. Now, that's a wildly volatile number, right? Which is why we always talk, don't lean on that as your first selling point of a guy. But if you are only catching 29% of your contested targets in a given season, as that skill set, you're having a bad year. And that's what George Pickens is having right now.
Want to give full credit to the Colts defensive line.
Again.
Yes. They pressured Trubisky on, I think it was 50% of his dropbacks.
And it felt like it.
But they also had several other quick wins that didn't become pressures. Again, that'll show up in their grading. So just from it goes both ways. The Steelers' pass protection grade is one of the worst we've seen this entire season. The Colts' pass rush grade was 90.1. DeForest Buckner, Samson Ebukam. I mean, those guys got after it. Lots of quick pressures. Ebukam with 7 total pressures, a couple sacks. Dayo Odeyingbo got in there on 20 rushes, had 3 times that he tackled Mitch Trubisky. I don't know how many official sacks he had, three by our numbers. Really impressive job by this Colts defensive line. And Gardner Minshew played a pretty clean game.
Yeah.
He's going to be interesting, too, because he's another guy that we always talked about the turnover-worthy plays earlier this year. That was never really how Minshew played, at least not that level of
Not
bad.
that extreme, yeah.
Right, so I think Minshew's actually, he should continue to get better, and even though they were technically producing and winning with him not playing at a high level earlier in the year. So Colts remain feisty and intriguing here. Also, breakout game for Trey Sermon on the ground.
Huge game for Trey Sermon. A big part of them just sort of running the game out for a lot of it. And then Najee Harris had one of those games where, the play that everybody hates where you freeze frame it. You're like, oh, this running back has terrible vision. Look at this snapshot of a wide open space over here.
The one I saw was actually right.
Yeah. And it was video, which makes it worse. Like you actually see the play develop and you're like, I don't have a good excuse for this. Like a lot of those running back plays, even if it looks really bad in a snapshot, you can see why the running back ignored what seems to be a giant gap and instead headed into the teeth of hell. Najee Harris actually ran towards the leverage of the defensive lineman and away from the leverage of his blocker that was opening up a giant yawning chasm of space off left guard, I think. I mean, if you're at that level right now, you are broken as a running back. Like you're not seeing it. Whether or not you can get it back, I don't know. But you're not seeing it right now, and that's how you get to 12 carries for 33 yards.
I don't know how many people remember the Trent Richardson screenshot that was going around. That was like 10 years ago.
Right.
But if they do, that was like the wrong thing, right? Because people are suggesting he cuts back on power and that he would have actually run into two defenders. It was like the wrong thing to screenshot. The Najee play that you're talking about, cutting back into the leverage, was not good.
Even if, ironically, the Trent Richardson thing was sort of indicatively correct, right? Like he did tend to do that.
It was the wrong screenshot.
Not on that play.
Yes, absolutely. Good win by the Colts, and not great by the Steelers. They started 7-4, man, and they're over at 7-7 right
as
now.
I say, they now need to go 2-1 against three pretty decent teams to save Tomlin's record.
All right, we'll talk Broncos-Lions here in a minute. But first, as a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family, how to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies, plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, wrapping up the triple header on Saturday. Detroit Lions 42, Denver Broncos 17. Lions move to 10-4. Broncos fall to 7-7. Another one of those teams in that mix, in that range. They're tied with the Steelers for the 10-11 seeds there in the AFC. But the Lions, big bounce back for them. They'd had a rough loss last week against the Chicago Bears, but it's a weird year with those types of games, right, Sam, where a lot of good teams are just laying an egg, but for the most part, they will bounce back and play well, and that's what the Lions did. Really owned the line of scrimmage, dominated up front, really clean game for Jared Goff. He ends up with 278 passing yards and 5 touchdowns on just 34 attempts. The Lions, you say this a lot. I mean, the Niners are the clear, when they're on, they're the best team. But when the Lions are on, it is pretty special what they can do. Yeah,
and it's not even like, they're not like Dallas earlier in the year where they have a clear trend of they only beat bad teams or they only do well at home or in a dome or whatever it is. The Lions, when you look at their losses, right? Okay, on the road against Chicago, Justin Fields, that's one of those ones that sort of makes sense as a potential trap game for any team. The Ravens game, though, was at home, right? The Ravens game was on the road, but the Seahawks game was at home. That, and then the Packers game on Thanksgiving. again, that was at home. Like, so even some of their losses don't make a ton of sense. But I've been meaning to bring this up for a while, that the Lions were on this run of they don't go outdoors until the playoffs again. So if you're looking at this team and saying this is not a team tremendously well set up to go outdoors in December and, get the tough, ugly weather games, well, they don't have to anymore. So if you're saying this is a flat track type of team, they need the dome, they need the speed, they need the good weather, they're going to get it all the way until postseason football play. And this was another one of those games, and this was them at their best. Jahmyr Gibbs making plays. Like, Gibbs started to look like he was justifying the top overall or the top first-round draft pick the moment they dropped the pretense of like offensive gimmick and just played him as a running back. And he said, hey, he's really fast and explosive, and if we have a good offensive line and a good offense overall, if we just give this guy touches, he'll make plays.
Yeah, but I think, I tweeted this out the other day too. Highest yards per carry since week 7. It's Jaylen Warren and then Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Right. I think there's something to the two-headed monster of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And I'll repeat too, it's not as simple as I like that the Lions aren't justifying Gibbs by giving him 20, 25 carries. I will also say, I said this a few weeks back, whatever the Titans thought they were going to be 5 or 6 years ago when they said, we're going to have exotic smash mouth, which sounded great on paper. We're going to have all different types of run concepts. We're just going to win up front. We're going to have explosive plays and power plays. We're going to run downhill and run outside. This is the Lions. What an incredible running game. I mean, even just the wrinkles that they add to their outside zone blocking scheme, it felt like nothing, not taking any credit away from Gibbs or Montgomery, but there were so many times, usually on the outside blocking scheme, you hit the outside path and you're usually cutting downhill, right? Because most of the time the front side doesn't have the cleanest blocking pattern. They're usually playing, the defense is setting it up for you to cut back essentially most of the time on an outside zone play. And that's fine. That's what it's designed to do. I've never seen so many plays where the running back just stayed on his initial path because the front side was wide open. And then when you get Gibbs into the open field, yeah, he is a playmaker. And David Montgomery has become a more explosive, bigger play type of back than he has been in the past. So it's really incredible. And the other stat that I dug up is Penei Sewell at right tackle, 93-plus run blocking grade so far this year. That's on pace. Remember, Trent Williams broke the record for a tackle in 2021. Penei Sewell has the second best grade we've seen since 2009 from a run blocking perspective. I know the Lions have had some just rough losses over the last month and a half. But man, when they are on, it is #fun to watch because that run game is explosive. And then the pass game and everything that they're able to do schematically. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a huge game. Sam Laporta had 3 touchdowns. He continues to be an incredible find. And you're right about Gibbs, man. Look, the Lions drafted, I think, 4 really good football players, including Gibbs at 12. I am willing to rethink the whole running back thing in the first round in certain situations, but also in situations where I'm at least getting an explosive playmaker, where it's a Gibbs. I think Bijan Robinson would put up these types of numbers, right, if they did get Bijan rather than Gibbs in the first round, which they were tempted to do, I think, where they were picking. So, man, I'm just real impressed with the Lions, especially when everything's clicking. They are really tough to stop.
Yeah, they are. Remember last year they had a game, was it against the Vikings, where it felt like Ben Johnson was just a step ahead of the defensive coordinator for the entire game. Every single thing he did was one step ahead, and the Vikings were never able to counter, and they were just getting like, boom, shot to the right, boom, shot to, like they just kept walking into each punch. This was one of those games this year. Like from step one, the Lions and Ben Johnson, from a play calling and schematic point of view, were just ahead of Denver, and Denver never got back and recovered. Everything they were doing was just setting up the next shot, and they were never able to counter it. And it was there was a point in the sideline where Sean Payton is just screaming at Russell Wilson, and it felt like an entire game's worth of frustration. Like, this wasn't one thing that Russell Wilson screwed up. This is just like, we are getting wrecked from play number one in this game, and I am taking it out on you individually right now. Like, that's what happened.
It's also one of those games when you talk about a whole season, and do you focus on recent trends, or does the whole season of data matter? Because the Broncos have been two different defenses this entire season, right? But does the early season mishaps, how as bad as they were, do those matter in the grand scheme of it? This was a throwback to the first 5-6 weeks of the season when the Broncos were historically bad defense. They just got wrecked, really on both sides of the ball here. So impressive win by the Lions. They moved to 10-4. Didn't realize they have this funky end of the season schedule where they have to play the Vikings 2 out of the next 3 weeks, and with the Dallas Cowboys sandwiched in between. So the 10-4 Lions creeping even closer to a division title, first one since 1993. I think if they beat the Vikings, that should clinch it, right, this weekend? I would think. We'll talk about all the clinching scenarios, though, on the
Kornacki show.
Man, Kornacki, that's what we'll do on the Thursday show. We'll cut to him with all the scenarios going forward, the clinching scenarios, not just the breakdown of where people are right now. All right, that was Saturday. Let's get to the Sunday games here. Where do we start? Let's get some of these out of the way here. Maybe the blowouts. Miami Dolphins 30, New York Jets nothing. Dolphins move to 10-4. Jets fall to 5-9. Miami had this one early and often. Zach Wilson fumble on a sack, set up an early touchdown, and Miami didn't look back here.
Yeah, and with no Tyreek Hill as well. That's a reasonably big statement from Miami's point of view, is that they were able to do it without, a guy that had been chasing 2,000 yards.
Against the Jets defense.
Yeah.
There's something to that. Good fodder for Tua fans, then good fodder for the wit out.
I think they need, so as long as they have one of Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, I think that offense is fine and able to function the way it does at its best. If they lose both of them, which they threatened to do in this game, Jalen Waddle had a play earlier where he got cracked and had to leave the game. It's like, uh-oh. Now if you don't have Tyreek Hill already and you've just lost Jalen Waddle, that might be a problem. But then he comes back and you're still good. Once you got one of those guys, he just steps into the Tyreek Hill role. He's probably as close an analog as you're going to find to Tyreek Hill in the NFL. So it still functions. Like, he's still lightning quick. He can make all those kind of cuts. Maybe you're losing a slight percentage at the top end of where Tyreek Hill can do that only he can do, but Waddle's a pretty close replica of that, so it still functions.
Yeah, and that's what makes the Dolphins' offense special, or potentially special, when they're both on the field trying to cover both guys. I mean, it also helps, like Tua's lightning quick release and everything that he brings to the table. It works better because those guys get into their route so quickly. I think we were talking about this the other day. Like, Tua can release it even quicker because they're getting into their breaks quicker and he's seeing space. I mean, he was on today, other than basically two throws, almost overthrew a screen that still got caught, threw one that easily could have been a pick six near the end of the half too that got dropped. But other than that, 22 of 25 for Tua for 247, including, his official numbers, 21 of 24 for 224, including that 60-yard touchdown to Waddle, just a dime on that bomb. And that was it, man. I mean, Waddle finishes with 142 of Tua's 224 passing yards in this game. Run game actually didn't do a whole lot for Miami. On the other side, though, the Jets could not do anything offensively. Zach Wilson dropped back 16 times. This is crazy. Dropped back 16 times. He was under pressure 12 of the 16 dropbacks, and 4 of them were sacks, including that strip sack. And it was one of those, I thought the Jets' game plan was fine. They kept trying to run play action. They kept trying to slow down the rush. Every time Zach Wilson completed the fake handoff, Dolphin in his face.
Yeah.
Every single time. So Wilson, he left with did they call it a head injury or officially a concussion?
They called it a head injury that wasn't a concussion, weirdly. They were clear in the distinction of he's not in the concussion protocol. It is a head injury, but not a concussion.
Okay, so
I don't know
he
what
left.
that is.
Yeah, Wilson finishes 4 of 11 for 26 yards, sacked 4 times. Trevor Siemian comes in, wasn't much better. Dominant outing by the Dolphins defense. And honestly, I mean, I guess Robert Saleh, I didn't hear the quotes, but he was blaming the offensive line, and it's tough to not point at the offensive line again for the Jets, because they just could not block.
Yeah, but it wasn't just the line. See, this is the thing. Like, the line is bad, and it gets whooped one-on-one regularly. But the play where they forced a fumble on Zach Wilson and Miami gets set up at, like, the 1-yard line and punches it in a couple of plays later for a touchdown, like, that's a complete and total protection breakdown, which, generally speaking, those are not on the offensive line. When somebody's wide the hell open and free, there's often a quarterback problem in there as well.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Either way, like
this was not like where I don't think this was a case of one offensive lineman picking the wrong assignment and suddenly there's like total breakdown, wide open guy in the backfield, rusher on the quarterback, forces a fumble. So in addition to the line being terrible on an individual level, it's also bad on a holistic, protection level. They're not getting the right protections in place, even if they were able to hold up on a one-on-one basis. So it's a catastrophe.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bad across the board for the Jets. Not much else to say here. I got no more use for this game except for what's going to happen coming up for the Dolphins. Their last 3 weeks of the season, they're sitting here at 10-4. And like the Ravens, they're two teams who control their own destiny. So if the Dolphins win out, they're the number 1 seed. If the Ravens win out, they're the number 1 seed. That's true because they play each other. The Dolphins' schedule over the next 3 weeks, they've got the Cowboys at home, then they're at Baltimore, and then they're home against the Bills. And, man, for a team like the Dolphins where you look back at their schedule and say, okay, they're 10-4, but where are the wins against good teams? They lost to Buffalo by a lot, lost to the Eagles, lost to Titans in that weird heartbreaker. It was a good bounce back by them, by the way, after the Monday night heartbreaker 6 days earlier. And they also lost to the Chiefs. So you're looking for the Dolphins to win against a good team? Well, they got 3 chances here. Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills to finish the schedule. 10-4 Dolphins. I'm assuming Tyreek Hill's back maybe for next week. He was close.
I would think so, yeah.
But, man, it's going to be a fun finish to the season, I think, for the Dolphins.
Do you see there was a play where, what the hell is his name now? Robbie Chosen?
Yes.
Lined up offsides in a Kadarius Toney tribute act. And the sideline judge was like running 2 yards onto the field to try and get him the hell off the line. Like, the Kadarius Toney at least looked towards the sideline and gave the signal, even if he then looked back and ignored whatever was coming back from the sideline. Robbie didn't even look, just sort of lined up offsides. The side judge is like, dude, back, nothing. He's like runs 2 yards onto the field. It's like off the line, and still not. I just thought that was in contrast to the, how much should you expect from the side judge in terms of trying to get players on side? That guy went out of his way to get Robbie Chosen back on side, and it still didn't make much difference.
Still not listening.
Yeah.
All right, let's stay in the AFC here. Kansas City Chiefs 27, New England Patriots 17. Chiefs moved to 9-5. Patriots fall to 3-11. It was a little back and forth game early. Patriots maybe with a little scare for the Chiefs. It was 7-7. Patrick Mahomes throws an interception in his own territory. Patriots go up 10-7, but then Bailey Zappi came back through his own interception in his own territory. Chiefs defense kind of cracked down for the rest of the game there. Of course, the story coming out of this too, when the Chiefs were up 27-10 and trying to run the clock out, another Kadarius Toney drop right on his hands that goes for an interception, leads to one more Patriots touchdown to make it 27-17. Mahomes visibly frustrated again at the end of the game. So stat line was going to be nice for Mahomes, but the second interception brings it down a notch. But still, yeah, very clean game for Mahomes. And Chiefs offense, pretty good passing attack outside of the 2 interceptions.
Yeah, well, so this was a game where the Chiefs offense was kind of the same as the Chiefs offense has been all season long. Constant mistakes throughout every skill position player not named Patrick Mahomes, right? So you've got the Kadarius Toney thing, which Kadarius Toney is now becoming like a cartoon. That was so absurd. Like standard Kadarius Toney, little route to get wide the hell open, ball put in his hands, and then just like ridiculous drop that not only not just a drop, but you somehow drop it and then bounce it up in the air and it lands right in the hands of the defender. Like that man is now becoming like Wile E. Coyote in a football uniform. Like every single play is just an anvil landing on his head. It's ridiculous. And Mahomes livid. But There was a drop touchdown by Travis Kelce. There was the first play of the game was like a chunk play to Noah Gray, negated by penalty. The Chiefs just could not get out of their own way again, and yet they were good enough that it didn't matter because Bailey Zappi has a terrible interception. The Patriots are just bad enough that it was going to be a win anyway. But this was the Chiefs. It's the same story. It didn't change. Even though they won this game and it was relatively comfortable, this is still a game that's like, dude, this can't happen in the playoffs against the best teams because it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, for the last 3 or 4 weeks, Mahomes, I think, has played better than he did earlier in the year. In this game, he's 27 of 37, 305, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, passer rating of 92.7. EPA was mediocre because of those interceptions, right? He's played better these last few weeks, far better than the stats have shown. Remember last year we had a lot of Chiefs fans very mad at us because, PFF can't capture Mahomes' greatness. They can't capture all of the incredible stats that he puts up. Well, they're coming back. Chiefs fans are going to come back. They're coming running back to PFF now as they try to justify, and it is justifiable, that Mahomes is playing far better than his stats would show. And as a team, you're absolutely right, Sam. I mean, they won't win in the playoffs if they play like this. And I don't know if it's not all just drops. It's penalties. They had a couple offensive pass interferences. I mean, there's just a lot of things going wrong in this game for the Chiefs, and they still win by 10. And again, I mean, the Patriots offense is not good, and they probably should have only scored 10 until they were handed that short field. But the Chiefs defense has been excellent for the majority of this season. And I think one of the weaknesses for the Chiefs has been that run defense, where they have some teams that can kind of run on them and grind it out, and they played well in this game outside of the late touchdown run by Kevin Harris. So, I mean, it's one of those games that doesn't teach you a lot of new information as far as the Chiefs go, other than, man, they're running out of time to clean things up offensively, where it feels like they won't be able to play this type of ball if they run into the Ravens or the Bills again.
Yeah, and they keep, making that point that the guys in the building are capable of turning this around. And the fact that Travis Kelce, by the way, is now one of these players making the mistakes is possibly a concerning development. It's one thing of Kelce and Mahomes, keeping the course, and it's just everybody else that needs to get their shit together, like Kadarius Toney. But Rashee Rice continues to fumble the ball, which is his one weakness on the season. He got back on top of the one that came out this time, and it was a good sort of helmet on the football type of thing. But Rashee Rice has had a fumbling problem this season. Travis Kelce, dropped a touchdown where he, I think, felt a hit incoming from Kyle Duggar and sort of, just bailed on it essentially, didn't come down with that ball. But Kelce needs to make all the plays that come his way because other people aren't. And if Kelce's now adding to that by not making those plays, there was also the weird play where he kind of pushed off and then flopped in the end zone, where if you just stood up, the ball's coming to you, why you flop? Okay, maybe you might get the pass interference call, but you would have get the touchdown if you just stayed on your feet and caught the football. The whole thing is just wrong.
The one somewhat controversial play in this game, there was a play where Sky Moore fumbled, and it got negated by an illegal contact.
I didn't see that penalty. As in, I didn't see.
There was no penalty.
Right.
So it's one of those games, again, if you're almost a 10-point underdog in New England, the only way they're going to pull that off is by those types of turnovers and plays, or the Chiefs just making all the mistakes that you mentioned. Once that got negated, it was like, all right, this is done. I mean, the Chiefs are just too good for New England to be able to come back here.
It was one of those plays where I didn't see the penalty. I saw the replay of what they were claiming the penalty was on, but I also didn't spend enough time looking to see if it was somewhere else and they just called the wrong number. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes you see a replay and it's been called on number 24, and they're like, here, look at this, number 24. There's nothing wrong with this play. But actually, if you look over there, it's the guy they actually called it on. They just called the wrong number, and that's a clear penalty. So I didn't see if this was a play where there was a clear illegal contact somewhere else in the set. But certainly what they were claiming the penalty was on should not have been a penalty.
All right, so Chiefs 9-5, no longer just a game ahead in the AFC West. It's now 2 games. And the Chiefs still have a path to the number 1 seed because they don't have – they have the Raiders, Bengals, and Chargers over the next 3 weeks. Ravens have to play the Niners, have to play the Dolphins. The two teams ahead of them have to, they're playing each other. Like, the Chiefs still have a chance at the bye here if they take care of business, despite all of the issues this year. New England locked into that number 2 overall pick, and with Carolina's loss, maybe still has a chance at number 1 overall.
Mahomes, by the way, must be like reaching the end of his tether at this point in terms of like, what am I supposed to do to get these guys not doing this? Like the Sky Moore play, Mahomes is right up to Sky Moore after that play to be like, don't worry, it's okay, it's not going to count. Look, there's a defensive penalty. And it's like, yeah, but it was still awful. Like, don't do that. And then I wish there was a lip reader out there with there's a shot of Mahomes like right in his face as he hits the sideline, goes on the bench, and after the Kadarius Toney play, I don't know exactly what he says, but he's like, I just something that guy. Like, it's like the dude is, I don't know what more I can do to give these guys the opportunities to make plays and not screw up, and it just keeps happening. Like, it's not like they're completely devoid of talent, this group. Travis Kelce is still Kelce. Kadarius Toney is capable of making spectacular plays. Rashee Rice looks like a great, talented rookie. They just need to stop making mistakes, all of them.
I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if the Chiefs hadn't won the Super Bowl last year, I was a little wrong. I was a little wrong because I thought that they invested too much in the offensive line and less in the playmaker situation.
This is the year that people thought they would have last year.
If you flipped the Chiefs' seasons last year and this year, it would make more sense.
Right.
Last year was so clean from start to finish for the Chiefs, including all the way through the playoffs. And again, the difference in the playmakers last year to this year is literally just Juju Smith-Schuster for Rashee Rice. And Rice has been good, even though he's not as productive as Juju was last year. But it's all the same guys. It was just Marquez Valdes-Scantling's not playing as well. Travis Kelce may have lost something, right, in another year of age. And you didn't get development from Sky Moore. You didn't get development from some of the other guys you were hoping for. And you lost McCole Hardman and then brought him back. But it's not that much of a difference from a personnel standpoint. But the point I made 2 years ago was knowing what the Patriots dynasty was for 20 years, if the Chiefs are going to have a Patriots-like dynasty, the only thing that slowed New England down was years where their playmaker situation was horrendous, pretty much. That was it. So don't let that happen, was my advice at the time. And it felt like they got through it last year with a great offensive line and good, not great playmakers, because Mahomes played great, elevated those guys. But I wonder if this actually does trigger the Chiefs to be like, just like they did with the offensive line 2 years ago, never again. Never again. And this is a year they're going after T. Higgins or Mike Evans or 2 draft picks or whatever it might be. I wonder if this actually ends up becoming the impetus for the Chiefs to say, okay, never again. We're actually going to flood the field with playmakers again in the Mahomes era.
So our live fact checker, Ben, is trying to bounce back and redeem himself from feeding us misinformation previously. He has found a screenshot of the defensive holding call on the Sky Moore fumble play where a DB clearly does hold. Alex Austin has hold of the guy's jersey and is pulling it back at the break, which I believe was the other side of the formation from the replay they were showing from memory. So it does look like a clear hold, or at least it's the kind of hold that will be called, right? Like the Super Bowl one with James Bradbury, where once you see the angle where the jersey comes away, it's going to get called. So legit holding penalty, even if the replay
faux outrage then
choice on TV was questionable.
We're good. All right, let's move on to Cleveland Browns 20, Chicago Bears 17. Browns move to 9-5. Bears fall to 5-9. What a crazy game this one was. First Browns win while trailing by 10 leading into the fourth quarter since 2014. Bears were up 17-7, and Joe Flacco magic, man.
Joe Flacco magic.
Yeah. Early on, the Bears got up 7-0. It was 7-7. Joe Flacco throws a ball over the middle of the field. Your guy, TJ Edwards, absolutely pops Cedric Tillman. Ball bounces up into Tremaine Edmonds' hands, brings it back for a pick six. That put the Bears up a score. Again, they were up 17-7 going into the fourth, but it was a full Flacco game, man. A couple turnover-worthy plays, 4 to be exact, but also 3 big-time throws, including 51-yarder for Amari Cooper, to Amari Cooper to tie it, and 36 seconds left, game-winning field goal for the Browns to salvage this one and go to 9-5.
Yeah, and so it was like remember, one of the things you said going into this game is, can Joe Flacco just avoid the critical, awful turnover that he tends to have every now and again? Because if he does, the rest of his game is good enough that they tend to win with that defense. Well, early, he had like a ridiculous interception. Like, all right, there it is. It's out of the way. Done. We're still in good position. The game's not got away from us, and Flacco's had his terrible mistakes, so we're probably good from this point on. Then he had multiple more terrible mistakes. You're like, okay, you can't do this. Like, this is going to be a problem if you're playing at this kind of level. And yet it was still okay because he was able to make enough plays, and everybody else made enough plays that he still overcame multiple catastrophic mistakes from Joe Flacco. And the game ends up, coming down to the wire.
So Flacco, it was very old school Flacco. Multiple turnover-worthy plays, some big-time throws. He got strip sacked by Montez Sweat really late in the down. And then in the comeback attempt, while they're down 7, just kind of floats one in the red zone to David Njoku. Tyreek Stevenson picks it off. He had another pick that on just a little hitch route that could have been a pick 6 that got dropped. I mean, some of the bad plays by Flacco were horrendous. But he also hits an absolute bomb to Marquise Goodwin, hits David Njoku on a big rollout. And again, the Amari Cooper one, he threads the needle about 25, 30 yards down the field, and then Cooper, catches it, defense is out of position. Cooper turns it into the 51-yard game-winning touchdown. And then, the final drive, David Njoku just takes over. He had 86. Njoku has 86 yards in the fourth quarter, 65 of which came on back-to-back plays on that game-winning drive where he just, there's a coverage bust in there by the Bears too, but man, Njoku just kind of takes over. I love that he starts leaping over people and the defense is leaping with him now.
He's become the player that he was a really highly touted draft pick. Incredible athlete, huge frame, talented, ball skills, all this kind of stuff. And it never quite happened for him earlier in his career. He's become that player now. Like, it's taken a while for him to warm up and get going, but this year's version of David Njoku is the prospect. Is like, read every scouting report on him. This is the player it's describing now. And he's been spectacular. He's been a big part of a lot of wins this season. Amari Cooper making plays as well. This was a weird game for Justin Fields, where the difference between the Bears winning and losing this game is receivers letting down Justin Fields. On the other hand, he didn't actually play that well overall. Like, he had a couple of spectacular plays, most of which the receivers screwed him out of, right? Like, he had an absolute bomb early in the game, got out of some pressure, got to right field, lofts.
Great throw.
Just a beautiful throw. Not only was it well thrown in terms of it was accurate, but he put so much air under it and for it to be accurate. Like, he lofted that thing with touch deep down the field to ensure that his receiver had every chance in the world to come down with it. Didn't. He had one nice play as well, like his touchdown to Cole Kmet, where he gets out and probably gets out of a Myles Garrett sack, rolls to the left, fires a dart, touchdown. That was one where his receiver actually did catch the ball and make up for it.
Beautiful play.
And at the end, where, okay, it's a Hail Mary. His part in it is essentially luck. It's like, just get it into the end zone and then hope it bounces your way. But he did. He got it into the end zone, and then it gets deflected down, lands in the hands of Darnell Mooney, who doesn't catch it. And, like, either one of those plays, if somebody catches the ball where Justin Fields put it into his hands, the Bears probably win this game.
Yeah, he had 2 interceptions, both on Hail Marys in this game.
Right.
The final Hail Mary from Fields, though, it tipped. Mooney was on the ground. It kind of lands in his lap. It's one of those.
In his hands.
It's one of those that's
he's
in
on the
slow
floor.
motion. It's like, how do you not? But, that's not easy.
But I don't know. That's one of, like, that's literally why he's there, right? It's somebody, the pile, the collection of people all going up to high point the ball. The defensive side of this is trying to bat it down and forwards right into the area where Darnell Mooney is there going to be waiting for a rebound catch. It lands not just like in his lap, but in his general vague vicinity. It lands in his hands. And he then, like, in the course of sort of panicking and trying to, like, squeeze it, launches it skywards and doesn't end up catching it. Yes, it's not as easy as a ball coming directly to you that he dropped earlier in the game, but it is why you're there. Like, that's the play. It couldn't have bounced any nicer for him than that.
I had something else I'm going to add there. Yeah, Fields kind of had an up and down game. Oh, this was the key to the game, man. Like the Bears offense just didn't do anything. It was just another dominant game by the Browns defense overall. Got lucky by the Bob Tunyon drop on that pass that you were talking about, but after
Bob Tunyon was the first one, right?
That was the first one, yes. After the Flacco interception, again, this is late in the third quarter, where it's like, all right, Flacco's already got multiple turnover-worthy plays, throws another one, they're down 10, it's like, all right, this isn't going to work. The Bears, after that interception, go punt their next few drives. Punt, turnover on downs, punt, and then the Hail Mary interception. So the Browns defense, as much as anything, deserves credit, or the Bears offense deserves blame, however you want to look at that, for this comeback. Browns defense really cracking down. Another great game by Myles Garrett. He's going to finish with double-digit pressures, even though he didn't actually hit Fields. A lot of quick wins again, and forcing incompletions and the whole deal. So Garrett up front. Dalvin Tomlinson had a big game rushing the passer. Just another incredible effort, I think, overall by this Browns defense.
Yeah, Browns defense was spectacular. They rode their luck in terms of Joe Flacco making way more mistakes than he usually does. But the thing that late era Joe Flacco does now is he's able to put himself on that kind of Josh Allen spectrum of, even when I make a bunch of terrible mistakes, I'm going to keep swinging and maybe we'll make enough positive plays to, overcome the big mistakes. Like the Browns are, they're capable of making the playoffs almost regardless of how Flacco plays. The way they're capable of winning playoff games is if he has those clean games where he just, instead of 2 or 3 glaring errors, he makes none. Like if they have a game like that, they're very difficult to beat.
I mean, it's going to be real interesting if the Browns, I keep thinking that they need to sneak in. I mean, they have a game on the other wild card hopefuls in the AFC. So I don't know what the playoff odds are for the Browns, but they play against the Texans, Jets, and Bengals over these next few weeks. That Texans game at Houston is going to be massive when it comes to playoff implications this week, Christmas Eve. But yeah, if the Browns get in, if they get into the playoffs, that defense going up against whether it's a Baltimore or a Kansas City or one of those division winners, man, they could sneak an upset.
Yeah,
come playoff time.
If they get a clean Joe Flacco game in the playoffs, they are very difficult out because that defense is nasty and the playmakers are good and the offensive line is still pretty good even though they're banged up and down all of their tackles. It's a difficult team to beat if Flacco doesn't screw it up.
All right, man. That's a big win for the Browns. Bears. I mean, I think Bears fans are in this crosshair of like they're rooting for wins. They kind of want to see the team show life and give you something to look forward to next year, since it's the Panthers pick that matters a little bit more. But now they're back in like the number 5 spot, I think, their actual pick. So they're in that we can grab a Caleb Williams and a tackle or elite receiver type of spot.
Yeah, though, imagine how bummed they were that Carolina got a win yesterday. Like that number 1 pick got a bit more precarious.
They could be losing it a little bit. All right, let's talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. We've got a lineup for tonight. It's Monday Night Football. It's the Seahawks and the Eagles. DK Metcalf is on the slate here. 61.5 receiving yards. We're going more than 61.5 for DK. We're going more than 47.5 rushing yards for Ken Walker. And then we got to get the kicker involved. Jake Elliott going more than 1.5 field goals made. Our friend producer Eli putting this together. We're getting close, Sam. We're getting close to mopping up here on Prize Picks. That's the Prize Picks lineup for PFF for today. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports, that's DFS, platform in North America. Easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more, you pick less. That's it. That easy. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than, or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. See, we just took the 3, and then you just watch the winnings roll right in. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can do that in the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries of some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every single week. Of course, Prize Picks also offers a reboot policy so the entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, even if you have a player that exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So, here's what you do. Go to prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, that's prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. So we got our lineup for the week. We've needed that injury insurance policy before. We need to, have that in play just like other people might. And it's pretty easy.
Doesn't sound like that would have helped Eli this week.
What were his results?
He says Jamar Chase got injured and missed by 0.5. So that's a tough break. He says Debo was never close and Kyron cashed. So he got 1 out of 3.
Well, this week's going to be better. This Monday night game is going to be better. DK Metcalf, Ken Walker, Jake Elliott, more on all of their prize picks projections. That's what's happening tonight. I feel it.
Okay.
All right, let's go to, speaking of Carolina.
Ooh.
Carolina 9, Falcons 7. Panthers move to 2-12. Falcons fall to 6-8. I really have just 2 plays to discuss.
Perfect. Well,
in
then
this game.
I have a few this week. There were a few metaphors that jumped to top of mind, right? There was the Kadarius Toney as Wile E. Coyote in a football uniform. This game, so not only is it the Falcons versus the Panthers, it's already kind of miserable just from a best case scenario kind of outlook. You get there, you turn it on, and it's like lashing rain, gray, overcast. Seasonal affective disorder, where people just get sad because it's winter and it's gray and miserable out. This game was seasonal affective disorder in NFL football form, right? You just turn it on and you're just like bummed out immediately. You don't even have to see anything happen. You turn on this game, it's slightly overcast looking anyway, it's gray, it's raining, you're like, ugh, this game is just miserable. And it stayed miserable for the entire game. It was just,
and then they played the game.
Yeah, it was just depressing from start to finish. And you're like, even though Carolina ends up sneaking it out and getting a win, you're like, I felt nothing. I just felt drained and depressed watching this game from start to finish. It was ugly.
Yeah.
Seasonal affective disorder. That was this game.
That's all we got. Sad. I mean, the 2 plays that decided the game
Perfect.
were the Falcons' mistakes.
Okay.
They're up 7-3, and they fumble at their own.
7-3 lead.
They're up 7-3, and they fumble at their own 20.
Yeah, that's
late in the third quarter, right? So that hands the Panthers a field goal. So now it's 7-6, and then Falcons drive back into the red zone, and once again, Desmond Ridder with a terrible red zone interception, rolling to his left, throws it back. I don't know who he was throwing to besides the Panthers. So they're up 7-6. I mean, at the very least, try to kick a field goal, make it 10-6, make the Panthers, score a touchdown, something they haven't done in this game. Something they didn't do in this game. Instead, Ridder throws a red zone interception, which he's had a knack for this season. The disastrous.
It's not a great knack to have.
No, the disastrous turnover at the wrong time of the game. So that took points off the board, obviously, for Atlanta. And then for all the conditions and everything, Bryce Young, he threw some of those old school late career Peyton Manning, kind of wobblers that got there, in the conditions. But Bryce Young threw a couple. He did a beautiful throw along the sideline to DJ Chark, who caught it and did a really nice job staying in bounds. Bryce Young actually threw the ball pretty well on the comeback drive to get into field goal range, and then they ran the clock out, kicked the game-winning field goal to cap the 9-7 win here.
Yeah, it's a sad indictment of his rookie season that this was genuinely one of the best games of Bryce Young's career so far. He played fine. I will say, so like his average time to throw was 3.3 seconds, and it did feel like for much of this game, the Panthers' best game plan was to just hope that he bought enough time for there to be a defensive penalty in the secondary. Like, if he just runs around behind the line of scrimmage, eventually somebody will hold or have illegal contact, and that's the way we move the football here. Because God knows we're not capable of actually doing it ourselves with the offensive personnel that we have. This is just, again, sad. It was miserable watching it. It's okay, every now and again he'll make a play and just about keep things alive, but It was a 9-7 game, and it felt like it. That's basically the upshot here.
Massive implications for the Falcons. Coming into the game, they were 6-7, tied atop the NFC South with the Bucs and the Saints. And it's the Falcons lost to the Bucs last week in another heartbreaker, right? The last 5 quarters of football for the Falcons have dropped their playoff probability something like 65-70% down to like 30. It's been a disastrous 5 quarters for the Falcons, including yesterday's entire game. So they fall to 6-8. They're a game behind the Bucs and the Saints. And I don't know if the tiebreakers are going to be there to help them in the end. Falcons looked like, I thought for most of the season, the Falcons looked like the best team in the NFC South. But the quarterback situation, man, just killing them. Panthers did a really nice job against the Falcons' run game. Tyler Algier and Bijan didn't get much going. But so credit the Panthers and their defense for that. But, man, it's a tough one for the Falcons if they were going to sneak into the playoffs and try to steal the division. That's it. Had no more use for that game.
Thank God.
Speaking of the NFC South, Tampa Bay Bucks 34, Green Bay Packers 20. Bucks moved to 7-7. The Saints, spoiler alert, we'll talk about them later, but the Saints win, so they're both 7-7. But the Bucks have the tiebreaker, and what an incredible game for the Bucks passing attack. Baker Mayfield finishes 22 of 28 for 381, 13.6 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns. And honestly, it felt like Baker Mayfield also gets sacked 5 times. And it felt like the only thing that was slowing down the Bucs offense were sacks. Because when Mayfield threw the ball, big plays were being created. I got some stats on that. I know Packers fans unhappy. And the question around Green Bay right now is Joe Barry, defensive coordinator, is he going to have a job by the end of the day here? As good as this was by the Bucs offense, I think it was that bad for the Packers defense. I think this goes both ways. This was a horrendous defensive effort and a really incredible offensive effort by the Bucs. Chris Godwin goes 10 catches for $155. Rashad White with another big game for the Bucs. Really impressive effort for Tampa Bay here.
Yeah, it was. It took Baker Mayfield just 3 quarters to set his season high for yardage in the game. The Bucs offense was able to do pretty much what they wanted, and Green Bay couldn't stop them at any point. I think we said on the preview show that generally this season, Joe Barry's defense hasn't been terrible overall, but they've been situationally terrible. Like with the game on the line late with a key drive, that's when they get crazy conservative and just sort of make it too easy for the offense. This was a game where the entire game was too easy for the offense. Like, this is the game that's what you use if you want to get the guy fired. Like, this game is evidence. This was a total disaster from a Green Bay defensive point of view. And it wasn't like they were completely, absent individual impressive performances. Like, they had some decent defenders overall, but it wasn't enough because the whole thing was just a catastrophe. So, yeah, miserable from a Green Bay defensive point of view. The only optimism or the only good things come out of this game from their side was their offense and their young players on that side.
Yeah, so the game, again, this was another one of those. It was kind of back and forth. The Packers came back within a score. Really nice throw by Jordan Love to Jaden Reed to make it 20-17. Bucs come back. And so the Bucs had the lead. They're up 20-10. Both teams kind of trading touchdowns and field goals. But a great pass by Jordan Love to Jaden Reed to make it 20-17. But when the Bucs were up 7 in the fourth quarter, and they have a chance, they're trying to run the clock, maybe one last score to go up 2 scores late in the game here. And Baker Mayfield hits David Moore. The same David Moore from the Seattle Seahawks,
of course,
for years. His 3rd catch of the season, I think it was, maybe a 2nd, on a little 3-4 yard out, catches it and runs through the defense for a 52-yard touchdown. Also, almost drops the ball at the goal line.
Dude,
don't. Dude.
That was almost one of the most egregious plays of the entire season. Like, he's there. He's a touchdown. Not only, like, it's one thing where you get a guy who's running and he just decides to drop the football as he's going over the goal line. That itself is idiotic. Moore reaches back to let it be, like, knocked out of his hands. Like, you actually invited the guy to make a play that he had no business making, and just about survived that you'd broken the plane of the goal line before the fumble happened. Like, I swear to God, if it didn't come at the end of making a spectacular play, I would cut a guy immediately for doing something that stupid.
I can't believe. I mean, it shows up a couple times a year.
I cannot believe people are still doing that.
I don't understand. I mean, Deshaun Jackson did it like 5 times in his career between college and the NFL.
But, like, again, it's one thing if you're running over the goal line, decide to drop the ball. Like, he reached backwards to let a guy try and make a play. Like, you actively went out of your way to make that happen.
No, I would make every single practice, I'd make everybody run the 10 yards of the end zone all the way through.
Right. The ball only leaves your hands once you've cleared the dead ball line at the end of the end zone.
Correct.
If you think about doing it before that, you're running laps or whatever the NFL equivalent is.
Anyway, that capped the incredible statistical outing for Baker Mayfield. So coming into the game, Mayfield was 27th out of 34 qualifying QBs in completion percentage on 10-plus yard throws. So coming into the game, 10-plus yard throws, Baker Mayfield was completing about 41% of his passes beyond 10 yards. In this game, he goes 10 of 11 for 204 in 2 touchdowns. It was a great game by Mayfield. He was throwing in rhythm, very accurate, excellent game by Mayfield. Again, though, I think we have to look at it from a Green Bay perspective as well. The defense was horrendous. We'll see if changes are coming there. But yeah, can't think of a much worse 6-day stretch for the Packers. So Miami blew a terrible game on Monday Night Football, bounced back with their win, pitch a shutout. The Packers have a fourth quarter comeback to Tommy DeVito on Monday night, and then give up 34 to the Bucs, who are averaging about 20 points per game coming into the game. And I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay has overcome a mid-season lull to now control the NFC South. They do have to play the Saints in a couple weeks that will probably determine the division. The Bucs play the Jags the Bucs also have one more game against the Panthers. So here's the rest of their schedule. The Bucs, last 3 games. They play Jacksonville on Christmas Eve. And now Trevor Lawrence is in concussion protocol. So it could be C.J. Beathard's Jags. Then they have the Saints. And then they have the Panthers again. The Bucs have a legitimate road to win the division here, host a playoff game as NFC South champions. But really impressive effort in Green Bay. It was the only perfect passer rating by a visiting quarterback in Lambeau history.
Really?
Yeah. 158.3 for Mayfield. 22 of 28 for 381 in those 4 touchdowns.
A couple of mentions for some of those young Green Bay offensive players, though, because that was the bright spot for them. Tucker Kraft has had one of the most insane rapid development arcs I've seen from a young tight end, young player, period, I guess. Like, training camp and preseason, the difference between him and Luke Musgrave seemed insane. Like, Musgrave was this obvious move tight end, like receiving talent, looked more dynamic, obviously was a bigger part of the offense, like had stuff designed for him, and Kraft didn't really look like anything. And it's like, well, this is why you double dip, right? Maybe it'll be the first guy that comes good, maybe it'll be the second guy, but between the two, you're fine. So Green Bay having one, like 50% hit rate seems fine. Now, Tucker Kraft has looked fantastic with this last few weeks of opportunity with Musgrave being out of the lineup. He's a very different tight end. Like, he's much less, I think, dynamic with the ball in his hand or athletic. But as a more sort of conventional inline tight end, he's looked really good. His touchdown in this game, like, it was a screen pass, and then he makes a nice move after the catch. He's looked really good. But also, you know, Dontavian Wicks had a big game as well, and he's made a lot of his opportunities this year. Jaden Reed had that touchdown. Like, this young group of receivers, when you consider they've been without Christian Watson and they're without Luke Musgrave, that was good, even though their defense stank, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Love played fine with those guys. I mean, there's a lot to be encouraged about with the Packers. It was just 2 weeks ago, though, maybe other people declared the Packers as the team you didn't want to play in the playoffs.
Well, the run.
They were playing so well. And the same Joe Barry defense shut down a Kansas City, like the Chiefs offense. I mean, I know they had drops and penalties, but the Chiefs offense scored 17 against them, and they shut down the Chiefs in a comeback attempt on Sunday Night Football.
There's like 20 teams this year that I don't know what the hell they are. Like they go on every team has a run where they aren't the team that they look like, or they're not the team now that they were then. Like even the 49ers had a 3-game losing skid, only one of which made any sense. Like the Cincinnati game when the Bengals were playing great. Right. That's the one where you're like, okay, fair enough. They just ran up against another really good team. But they lost the game to the Vikings, and who was the other team they dropped to?
Browns.
Right. Like, what? And the Browns without quarterbacks. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, they were missing some players, but it was not all of them. Like, they still had a bunch of their best players out. Every team has got these weird games or these weird stretches of games where they look completely different this year. And it's why when you look at the standings and your playoff scenarios and stuff, like there's a bunch of teams that are going to be in the playoffs that at least for a stretch of this season looked awful.
Yeah, I mean that's why teams that have in both conferences, the number 3 seed has a chance at the number 1 seed,
right?
And the number 5 seed has a chance of not making the playoffs. I mean that's just where we are here with 3 weeks remaining.
And you have all these games yesterday where they're talking about this team is now the 11 seed. Playoff the 11. That's not a thing. There is no 11 seed. The 11 seed is you're just another team not in the playoffs.
But you're in the hunt.
Yeah.
Hashtag in the hunt. All right, let's go. Staying in the NFC South, New Orleans Saints 24, New York Giants 6. Saints moved to 7-7. As I said, they're tied record-wise with the Bucs in the NFC South. The Giants fall to 5-9. Tommy DeVito magic runs out a little bit here. Derek Carr finishes 23 of 28 for 218, 3 touchdowns. Had a nice one up the seam to Juwan Johnson. And somebody tweeted at me that I need to reference Jimmy Graham again as the catalyst in the red zone. Another red zone touchdown for Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham has 6 catches this year, 4 of which have gone for touchdowns, and the other 2 of which have gone for first downs. Somehow they've turned Jimmy Graham into tight end Mike Vrabel. All he does is catch touchdowns or first downs in short yardage situations.
That's it. All of a sudden the Saints can win when they have Jimmy Graham involved. What else on this? Other than Tommy DeVito doesn't want to go hang out at the local Italian
upped his fee.
Sub shops or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. Is the hype getting to Tommy's head a little bit? Is he getting? Is this his Willie Beeman stage where the hype is getting to him? He's busy doing his version of rap songs, right? He's doubling his fee to appear at the Italian restaurant. His agent, by the way, right? Do you see him on the sideline in his Italian American Hall of Fame suit?
Yes.
I genuinely think we can get you into that Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
now,
I'm an Italian American.
I can't
I am not in the Italian American Hall of Fame. I didn't know it existed.
No, neither did I. And this is part of why I think we can get you in there. I can't find a list of the people that are in there, right? There doesn't appear to be a list of the Hall of Fame anywhere. But I did see this year's nominees, of which I forget this guy's name, but Tommy DeVito's agent was one of them. Given that list of people, I feel like you're at least on the fringes of being in this Hall of Fame with your resume. Are you the preeminent Italian-American NFL podcaster?
I got to be close.
Right?
I have to be close.
And you couple that with your obscure baseball career. I mean, you start building a case now.
We've worked together over 10 years, and this is one of the nicest things you've ever said to me. that you want to kind of start a campaign.
I do.
To get me into my dad would be very proud.
Yeah.
Loves a good Italian American, my dad.
I want to see you in that suit aside from anything else.
I was firing my resume over to you. I think, if you add up, I was Division II preseason All-American.
There you go.
College baseball.
You're in other halls of fame. I mean, you could put that on the resume.
I am a 3-time Hall of Famer. I was a UMass Lowell intramural flag football champion in 2004.
Right.
And perhaps one of the preeminent Italian-American NFL podcasters who happens to partner with an Irishman.
Exactly.
I mean, these things, I think the resume's stacking up.
So look, there are 8 people that are in this inductee class. Now, I'm going to assume that this has been going for a while and that Rocky Marciano is already in, I would hope. Because the only person I've heard of from this list.
First ballot, Rocky.
Right. The only person I've heard of from this list, other than Sean Stellato, Tommy's agent, is Giuseppe Rossi, who was, to be honest, a fairly underwhelming, soccer player who was talked up as having amazing potential and never really happened for him. But Rossi's in there this year. Good for him. Sean's in there as well. Good for him. But like other people here, we've got. I mean, you told me that, was it bocce is a big thing?
Big thing, yeah.
We've got some sort of bocce champion going in this year.
Yeah, well deserved. I mean,
we've got a guy who is listed. His achievement is former superintendent of the Chicago Park District.
I'm sure he did great things for the Chicago
I'm
Park
sure he
District.
did.
Yes.
But I have to think that your resume stacks up well against the Park District guy.
The chat says Tommy's agent, Stellato,
Yeah.
referenced Rocky Balboa as an influence.
As an influence.
Balboa, not Marciano.
No.
Like the fake character from Philadelphia.
Right. Anyway, my point. So this is the 44th annual. So 44. Okay. So if we've had 43 classes before, I figure we're quite deep into this, right? I think we can get you in. We need to start a campaign to get Palazzolo into the National Italian American Sports Hall of Fame. We need the ceremony next year. We need you in the green suit with the giant patch, the Hall of Fame thing here, the giant green suit. You look like Elf. It'll be amazing.
Might look like Elf on Wednesday
Right.
on the show. Do you think they have custom suits for everybody, or do you think they're just like off the shelf? If it fits, it fits.
I feel like you might have to go get your own suit made, but I think it's worth it.
Okay.
I feel like Sean made
Not gonna lie, I wouldn't hate if our listeners and viewers started a campaign, and if you headed this thing up, because I feel like I need a fourth Hall of Fame in my life. Yeah. I think I need a fourth one as a 3-time Hall of Famer.
If in mid-December 2024, if we are in Chicago or wherever this is next year, getting you inducted into the National Italian American Sports Hall of Fame, maybe Sean can be your I don't know if they have like an inductee, the guy that gives you from one Hall of Famer to another.
He's
right?
my inspiration.
That's what I'm saying.
Sean is absolutely inspiring me. That
if we have him in his shiny green suit, shaking your hand in your shiny green suit, I mean, this is content right here.
We're doing it for the content. If there's anyone, I mean, because we have a lot of listeners, we have a billionaire that watches and commented on YouTube a couple weeks ago. If you're involved in the Italian American Hall of Fame, like, what do I have to do here? What do I have to do?
Right. Or you have the kind of money that can just make these things happen.
Yeah, just make it happen.
Right.
Just make it happen.
I'm not.
Somebody call to attention the resume that I've been, spouting off here.
Building. Yeah.
One thing about the game.
Oh yeah.
By the way, we should cut that whole thing for a one-off and tag. So what we need to do, social team, is that whole Steve for the Italian American Hall of Fame. We'll cut that up and throw it on social. Tag the necessary people. I wonder if my former teammate Chris Colabello's in. That guy loves being Italian. He's got to be in this Hall of Fame. Made it to the big leagues in his 30s. Played for the Italian World Baseball Classic teams. Got to be in at this point. And, I mean, if Colabello could be in.
The Italian, I was just checking. They do, in fact, have a Twitter page, the National Italian American Sports Hall of Fame.
Let's tag them.
They have 999 followers. They are followed by Dan Pompei, though.
This is great. In this game, as I mentioned, Tommy DeVito sacked 7 times.
Dude, what the heck? Phil Mickelson is in this?
Well, sometimes your mom's Italian, and it doesn't show in your last name. You don't have to have. I mean, Mike Piazza has to be in there.
Okay, the resume does seem to get harsher the deeper you go. Joe Montana's in this, so it's not as easy to get into as it looked from the 44th class.
What did Stellato? Stellato got in before he was on the sideline in the fedora talking on the phone.
Right, he was already on his way in.
famous.
Yeah, okay. The deeper you go into history, the harder this appears to get in. But maybe maybe we've done it. Like we're all the decent Italian American sports people are already in. So now's your
They're
time.
just filling out the classes.
Right now, it's your opportunity.
Like Joe DiMaggio, Joe Montana, they're in.
Yeah.
We're good. We got everybody that needs to get in.
Right now, it's your turn.
I mean, they don't call it the Hall of Very Good, Sam.
They
but
don't.
You might need to fill in with some very good people. I just wanted to touch on DeVito getting sacked 7 times.
Yeah,
and
that
the
was
Saints.
a problem in the game.
The Giants' offensive line. I mean, the most impressive thing about DeVito, I think, is that for 3 or 4 weeks, we kind of forgot about the Giants' offensive line being historically bad and an absolute train wreck. That's actually impressive by Tommy. In this game, though, the Saints, anytime they stunted, the Giants didn't block it. And then they even had plays where they kind of like set up. Sometimes you set up in a stunt type of overload, and they didn't stunt, and the Giants also didn't block that. So there was just a lot of plays where the Giants' offensive line did not block Saints.
Yeah.
And that's my analysis there, and led to 7 sacks.
Conversely, you had the Saints' offensive line, which has been very hit or miss, was virtually perfect from a pass blocking standpoint in this game. The Giants' pass rush was not able to do anything against the Saints' offensive line. A large part of that was the ball was coming out pretty quickly. Like Derek Carr had one of those games where he looked very good, didn't make mistakes, put the ball more or less where he wanted to on multiple plays, and got it out of his hands quickly. And the Giants just had no shot to affect that on defense. Like what they were doing just wasn't having an impact whatsoever. The only guy I think that you would say, you would expect to impact it would be Dexter Lawrence, but they just didn't give him an opportunity to.
All right, so like I said, Saints 7-7, Giants move to 5-9. Last of the 1 o'clock games. It was the Houston Texans 19, Tennessee Titans 16. Overtime win for the Texans. What a crazy game. A lot of craziness in the very end of the game, in the fourth quarter and overtime. But the Titans got up 13-0 in this game. Case Keenum throws a pick 6 to Elijah Molden. It was a bit of a miscommunication. Looked like the Case Keenum. By the way, we thought Davis Mills was going to start.
Yeah.
Ends up being Case Keenum. It looked like, hey, Texans backup quarterback, just not going to be their day in Tennessee. But the Texans overcome the 13-0 deficit. It's 16-16. They go into overtime. Both teams, looked like it could be a tie. Could have been the first tie of the season. I'm rooting against the ties because it ruins all the records and everything. It was good. There's no tie. Texans win with a 54-yard field goal to go to 8-6. And as we said earlier in the show, Texans, Colts, and Jags all tied atop the AFC South with an 8-6 record.
Yeah.
Discuss.
The weird game from Case Keenum. There's a miscommunication for the pick 6. There was a play, though, where Noah Brown had to turn pass breakup. He had to turn DB to pass breakup an interception from Roger McCreary on a comeback route on the sideline. There was another ridiculous heave and hope pass where Dalton Schultz somehow takes it away from a DB to set up 1st and goal. Multiple throws where Keenum was just heaving it up into coverage or in the vague general direction of players, which, let's remember, that's how he had the 2017 season for the Vikings, right? Just put it up there. Stephon Diggs will go make a play. So it's not like it's not his MO normally. And again, it came good. There's a degree to which in the NFL, if you just give receivers a chance to make plays, they're going to make enough of them to make you look pretty good. And so you had that general disposition of Case Keenum versus the psychotic recklessness of Will Levis on the other side. Just made for a wild quarterback matchup.
It really did. I mean, and then there was a lot going on here. You mentioned to me yesterday, before we get into the overtime stuff, Derrick Henry finishes with 16 carries for 9 yards. 16 for 9. I mean, the Texans' run defense, they were without Will Anderson, played really well up front. Texans' defense. Nice job against, the Titans' offensive line has not been great. Texans kind of imposed their will up front. Derek Barnett, who they signed from the Eagles a few weeks ago, playing pretty well on 25, 30 snaps per game over the last couple weeks. Jonathan Grenard has just been outstanding. You talk about a guy, what's he in year 4, year 5? Just unbelievable breakout season for Grenard, who went from good to just very good this season. He had a nice game. Texans defense just deserves a ton of credit on that side of the ball. But man, you get into, again, I want to talk about the overtime craziness because it looked like they had a walk-off win. Devin Singletary running through the defense. It gets called back for a holding. But the controversy here, Sam, as we mentioned on the show, is the Titans wearing the Houston Oilers throwback. And this is kind of deep-rooted between the two teams.
You see Mike Vrabel pre-game had the bum Phillips hat,
Yeah.
with the big cowboy hat on. I can't believe he didn't have that on the sideline. I was like, yes, Mike. Mike's there with the giant Bum Phillips cowboy hat. You're like, to go with the Oilers thing. If he walks out there in a sheepskin and that hat, like, game over. We're done. We're winning this already. And then he's just out there on the sideline in like regular garb. That was just for like the preseason or the pregame.
Do you think Vrabel wanted to do that, or they're like, hey man, you throw the hat on?
I think if Vrabel wanted to do it, it would have been done. Nobody's stopping Vrabel from walking out there with a sheepskin and a giant cowboy hat on.
No, but do you think he wanted to wear the cowboy hat, or it was like, hey, you got to do this because we're wearing the throwbacks?
Somebody probably said it, and then he was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And then as long as I don't have to do it for the game, we're okay. But I feel like if he'd walked out there with the full Bum Phillips get-up, we wouldn't have needed overtime. We would have won this thing in the second quarter.
There were 3 punts in overtime, which is why we thought we were teasing a potential tie in this game. It felt like every time, because teams, like, they move the ball a little. Both teams kind of move the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
Sacks, just kept moving them backwards. Both the Titans and the Texans. Again, this game was very close on both sides. And then the very end of the game, it's Case Keenum hitting Devin Singletary for a 41-yard pass. Singletary, it looked like back-to-back plays, or 2 out of 3 plays, where Singletary goes 41 yards, and then 2 plays later, it would have been a 34-yard touchdown nullified by holding penalty down the field. And then, 1 play later, they set up the 54-yard field goal to win it with 2 seconds left. Very close to a potential tie here. But, man, a huge win for the Texans, doing it with Case Keenum, because C.J. Stroud's concussion. I'm assuming Stroud is back next week against the Browns. But, Houston still has the division potentially in sights here.
They do, yeah. It was another game where I was quite impressed by Levis, even though he's crazy, and there were some bad plays in there as well. I thought he battled back. He also, by the way, there were a few of these yesterday, horrific-looking injuries that don't appear to be that bad. Like, he had an injury that they wouldn't show on the broadcast because they were like, oh, this is terrible. And like, oh, no, Levis is down. That's like the one,
They keep saying that.
I know.
On a lot of plays.
You're like, that's the one thing that's the one bright spot for Tennessee this year. That would suck if he had, but apparently he was not okay, but he was sort of limping around post-game and didn't sound like it was going to be that bad. So that would be huge for them if they're able to get Levis healthy out of this, and it wasn't a major injury for him. But that looked like it could have absolutely ruined their season. The other thing of note from this game, so there was a throw that Levis made on late in the game.
Late Q4, 45 seconds? I'm looking at it.
No, not 45 seconds. 3rd and 6 on that drive, I think, with like 2 minutes left. He targeted DeAndre Hopkins over the middle. And what I'm pretty sure was just like a clear out route that wasn't supposed to be targeted because Hopkins doesn't want the ball. In fact, wasn't really looking for the ball. Turns around and it like hits him in the head. And then it was another one of those Nuke Hopkins-Levis, post-game discussion or post-snap discussions where Nuke like looks back at him and is like, what are you doing, right? But it would have been a first down if he'd been looking for it and caught the ball. I just recently read this story. It's old. I forget where it came from, but it was who was the receiver that the Patriots signed along with Randy Moss? Dante Stallworth. So it was Dante Stallworth ran just a random clear out route in the offense, right? And then Brady threw him the ball. And he's like, this is not, I've been in different offenses. Every team has this play. This is just like a decoy. It's a clear out. It's not it's not an option on the play, right? So he just ran it loafed it, right? Just ran like a 75% route, and Brady threw him the ball, and because of that, he didn't get to it, went to the sideline, and McDaniels came up to him and was like, hey, in this offense, every route is live. Like, you've got to run them because Brady will find you if you're open, right? And he was like, wow, that, there's this epiphany that Brady's different. Well, this was open. Like, you may think it's only a clear out route, but there was a window between 2 DBs in the middle, or 2 defenders in the middle of the field, and Levis put the ball there for what would have been a first down on a key game-winning drive potentially.
Yeah.
And you just didn't think it was an option, so you didn't look for it. So
you just called Will Levis Tom Brady.
Well, I know in this world of like, look, 10-year veteran wide receiver versus crazy rookie quarterback, you would tend to assume that the wide receiver was the guy that was in the right and that the quarterback was in the wrong. Whether or not he should have put the ball there, he did, and the receiver's got to catch it.
You've taken to describing Will Levis's style of play, the same way that I describe Wink Martindale's defense.
Crazy.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic.
In a good way, in a way.
In a fun way. I mean, it's crazy. And, Mike Vrabel said that he was like showing him cut-ups of quarterbacks getting killed to try and convince him to slide.
That also didn't work this
Yeah, I mean, if he did, it had no impact because Levis is still out there going Levis copter on like 1st and 10, trying to pick up 8 yards, forget 10. He's just trying to, it's insane. It's fun to watch, but it is crazy. And it's probably going to injure him at some point.
Man, it was, game was nuts. But so Titans fall to 5-9, Texans 8-6, again tied atop the AFC South. And if they sneak in, the Texans feel like the team. I know, whatever. If they sneak into the playoffs,
They're
not
the
like
team.
you don't want to play them, but they have the pieces to do damage.
Yeah.
They have the pieces to do damage in the playoffs, even against some of the better teams in the AFC. So
the other two things to mention in this game, just two performances. Running back, Devin Singletary had a great game, even with that play that could have been a walk-off but wasn't. And then Derrick Henry had one of the weirdest box scores I've ever seen from a running back. Derrick Henry.
I said it earlier. You weren't listening.
16 carries for 9 yards.
Yeah.
27 of which came after contact. So he averaged like a negative yard before contact and then fought his way to positive yardage over the course of 16 carries.
Yeah.
That's never happened to Derrick Henry before.
The Titans didn't block well.
No, their offensive line was terrible again.
Pass blocking, run blocking, it was not good.
Derrick Henry had negative 18 yards before contact.
Yikes. We should check that.
That's got to be close to a record, if not a record.
We should double check that, make sure it's right.
Yeah, their offensive line
Seems
was
wrong.
terrible. Peter Skoronski, who's like, as a rookie, probably their best offensive lineman, he didn't play terribly, but when he lost, it was bad.
There were some where he just...
Malik Collins got him 2 or 3 times where he just destroyed him. And it was kind of the only time it happened in the game for both sides. Like, it was the only Malik Collins wins and it was the only Skoronski losses, but they were all really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, last thing I'll add about this game, Nick Caserio and some of the moves he's made over the last couple of years, but like Denzel Perry, here are the big games grading-wise on the defense for the Texans. Denzel Perryman, Derek Barnett, who I mentioned, 34 snaps just off the waiver wire a couple weeks ago. Jalen Petrie, the second-year player. Christian Harris and Jonathan Grenard, who I mentioned earlier, just doing a really nice job. Malik Collins, who you mentioned, had a bunch of big wins. All of those little pieces that have been added over the last couple of years, I think, starting to add up for the Texans, and they deserve credit for that, for what they've been able to do. And again, they did it without first-round pick Will Anderson yesterday. All right, man, let's get to the 4 o'clocks. Are we getting to the 4 o'clocks? No, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at AG1 first. Before we get to the 4 o'clocks, it's our daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every single day here on the PFF NFL podcast. I love it because, look, I kick my day off with my coffee and my AG1. Right there, you see it on the screen. Throw my water, throw my AG1 in there, shake it up, and I chug it down, and boom, got all my nutrients for the day. Makes me feel great. Gives me that same kind of kick that the caffeine gives, except it's actually good for my body. It's actually healthy. Just like all great athletes, they have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. Huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health, and a lot of them also drink AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. So with every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with the 75 high-quality ingredients that give me all the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's all part of the routine here on the PFF NFL podcast, and this micro habit of drinking my AG1 delivers macro benefits that helps just about everybody take care of their health. Doesn't matter if you're an athlete, if you're going to the office, you're going to the gym, doesn't really matter. AG1's helping everybody here. So also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me for this healthy choice that you're making. It's a really effective daily habit with the high quality sourced ingredients, a win-win for all of us here on the PFF NFL podcast. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Sounds like a great deal to me. You go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's ag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. All right, San Francisco 49ers 45 to, what did Arizona have?
29?
29, 45-29. I had it, and then I clicked off of it. Another big game from Brock Purdy in the 49ers passing game. Brock Purdy, 16 of 25 for 242, 4 touchdowns, passer rating of 135.3, which is actually lower than his passer rating dating back to week 10, which is nuts. Christian McCaffrey, 18 carries for 115 and a score. And I'll say this, Brock Purdy, now the favorite to win the MVP, and he's also the highest graded quarterback since that 3-game losing streak, since that bye week for the 49ers. Purdy, number 1 PFF grade since that point. We've mentioned it the last couple weeks here on the show. Is it true that Brock Purdy probably had better stats than the way he was playing at some point in his career earlier in the year? Yes, that was true. But now he's also playing better football, and that's why the Niners do seem unstoppable on offense.
Yeah. They're also playing the Cardinals. That's a part of it.
Oh, okay. Well, they've done it against everybody.
No, sure.
Which is why in the preview show I said 12.5? Doesn't feel high enough.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. Game Cardinals, so the Cardinals scored first. Like they went down the length of the field.
They employed your strategy.
Yeah, they scored a touchdown. And then they might have had a shot, except they then threw a pick six, and the game, that eroded that strategy of getting a lead and forcing the 49ers to play from a double-point deficit and changing the entire dynamic, They had a shot because they scored first, and then they couldn't back it up.
Charvarius Ward jumps a Kyler Murray pass over the middle of the field, takes it 66 yards for the pick six. That put the Niners up 14-7. And you always credit the Cardinals. They battled back. They almost had a blocked punt for a touchdown that got called back, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they tried to hang close, but one Purdy play. So, again, it's 21-13 going into the second half. So the Niners are only up 8. The Brock Purdy pass to Christian McCaffrey for a 41-yard touchdown. A couple things to break down here. Instant pressure up front, up the middle, that Purdy does a very nice job of just getting out of the pocket. And then absolute coverage bust by Arizona. A nice adjustment by Christian McCaffrey. He was wide open, nobody within 20 yards. But one of those plays that looks easy, looks wide open, which it was, but Purdy has to make that with the instant pressure. And you always compare him to, like, what would Jimmy Garoppolo do? Jimmy Garoppolo may have just, fallen over for a sack. And so the offense still would have been really nice.
Falling over.
It would have been a really good game by the 49ers. They would have won by 1 touchdown, or 10 points instead of 17 or 16. But on this time, Purdy created outside of structure and created this touchdown for 41 yards.
Yeah. Yes, it's a reasonable point. This is why the 49ers sort of conversation is so difficult, because all of it's working. That's why they're scoring 45 a game. Brock Purdy may end up having the best case for MVP. Like, if you looked at some of the conventional numbers or the EPA per play, like the ways some people measure this, he's the clear MVP. It's not even close. I don't think that's true because of the impact that Shanahan and the rest of the offensive skill position players and yada yada have. But I think he still may end up having the best case for MVP in a year where nobody has a clear, obvious case. Like, there's no unanimous MVP this year. There's no guy that's going to get 45 of the 50 votes or whatever, first place votes. It's going to be somebody with like 28, and it might even be somebody, now that they are doing the MVP vote in a sort of point system, first, second, third place, it might end up being a guy getting MVP who has fewer first place votes than somebody else, which would be the first time that's happened, and the internet will be set ablaze when that happens. But I do think we're reaching a point where Purdy has a fairly strong case for MVP, if only because nobody else does. And because he's improving. Like, he is getting better as the season goes on. He is making plays that are him, not just the offense. And then he has the plays that the offense produces as well. And you add all that together, and the 49ers become unstoppable and start hanging 40 on everybody and yada, yada. So, yeah, that's been true for a while. I don't even think this was a particularly good Purdy game. It's just that the Cardinals are kind of that bad on defense.
It was good. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was fine. It was good. But it's not like, he's had games where he's actually been really, really good and, made a much bigger difference.
The totality of his play here's what's changed, I think, from a grading standpoint. Since week 10, again, that was post Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams injury. Since that point, just 2 turnover-worthy plays for Brock Purdy. I mean, that was if there was a thing that was bringing down his grade, it was that he would have a couple duds, right? He would have a couple bad plays, throw the ball late into coverage or get away with, a pass that should have been picked or whatever it was, or fumble. He had a couple fumbles earlier in the season. He's cut down on just those, and the grading looks much better. Plus, again, he's got far more big-time throws than we've seen in this offense in previous years. Done a really nice job. And then those out-of-structure plays, when you add it all up, is everything working? Yeah, if you're a Purdy detractor and you're like, the stats are fake, just watch the first touchdown that he throws to Deebo Samuel, which is just wide open and easy. You could make the case for the McCaffrey touchdown, but again, he's got to kind of create that out of pressure.
His biggest obstacle in terms of argument might be, number one, the fact that there's no clear MVP and no clear candidate. Christian McCaffrey has a good case as well, and his case is getting stronger as well. Like, McCaffrey was unstoppable in this game, was great on the ground, had that play in the air as well. McCaffrey's been incredibly good, and Deebo Samuel is also a thing in this offense. And that 3-game losing skid was when Deebo wasn't in the lineup. And it's like, you can make a case that actually Deebo is the most important player in this entire offense, not McCaffrey, not Brock Purdy. I don't know that you'd be correct, but you could at least make the argument. All of that makes Brock Purdy's case harder to make when you're comparing it to players that you don't make that argument for. So anyway, it's been the same story. Like, you add those guys all together in the same lineup and they become virtually impossible to stop. And this is kind of a good example of it. Like, the Cardinals had some really good plays on defense and some good individual players. Like, Antonio Hamilton made a bunch of plays early in the game. Starling Thomas made a really nice play. They had a few defenders individually make some good plays, but over the course of 50 snaps or whatever, it wasn't enough because the 49ers are just too difficult to stop.
One of the funnier things that happened in this game. So Brock Purdy gets hurt. That wasn't funny. Glad he came back. I was a little worried at first that he got absolutely popped. Purdy comes out. Sam Darnold comes in, kind of throws a bad pass to George Kittle in coverage. Then the next pass, it's 3rd and long or whatever, hits George Kittle right in the hands, drops it. And then a couple plays later, Brock Purdy comes in and George Kittle makes a one-handed catch for Purdy. It was a nice throw by Purdy. It was just funny to me. Right. And of course, I tweeted that out, and the responses were, well, Sam Darnold doesn't throw a catchable ball. He throws it too hard. He doesn't have any touch on the ball. Yeah. I mean, he put the ball right on George Kittle. It was just funny.
I always think that's funny when you get, like running backs where it's there's a split workload in the backfield, and oftentimes one running back is seen as like, this guy's a game changer. He's the guy we want more playing time, and the other guy's just holding him up. And then you get like or either one guy goes in, incredible hole, 10-yard gain, easy play. The next guy comes in, and immediately, like, the offensive line just has a nightmare. There's 3 guys in his face, 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, and everyone's like, see, the other guy should get all the carries. Like, dude, the second guy came in and immediately had nowhere to run to. Like, he didn't have the same picture to work from as the first guy.
It was just funny that Darnold comes in, hits a wide open George Kittle, he drops it, and then Kittle makes the one-handed catch for Brock. Anyway, number 1 graded quarterback since week 10, it is Brock Purdy, and the numbers are out of this world and ludicrous. And Walt, you're right. Trent Williams did not miss all 3 of the losses for the Niners. He missed 2 out of the 3. He was there for the Browns loss.
Right. Deebo missed 3, though. Right?
Deebo missed all 3. Trent Williams missed 2 out of the 3. You're right. Walt in the chat. All right, let's go. Los Angeles Rams 28, Washington Commanders 20. Rams move to 7-7. Commanders fall to 4-10. Matthew Stafford finishes 25 of 33 for 258, couple touchdowns. Kyron Williams with another 152 yards on the ground. So the Rams scored 28 points. It felt like, there was a point in this game where all they had done was score or fumble the ball away. That was out of their first 6 drives. 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, 2 fumbles, losing the ball on a fumble by Kyron Williams. Felt like the Rams definitely could have put up 40 in this game.
Yeah. Kyron Williams has been insane since coming into the lineup. And this is a 2022 5th-round draft pick. who they just like stumbled upon randomly this year. It's like, oh, he's actually amazing. We should use him all the time.
Like Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyren Williams, they showed the on-off splits for him, which are very noisy but fun to tell stories about. The Kyren Williams on-off, like when he's on the field, it's the Super Bowl Rams team. When he's off the field, it's the 2022 Rams team, which was a disaster last year when nobody could block and nobody could catch and nobody could do anything.
Yeah. I mean, this is still not a good offensive line, and yet he's averaging over 5 yards per carry this season. He's averaging 3.5 yards after contact per carry. And he's not like it's not like we're talking about Derrick Henry, giant 250-pound monster. Like he's 5'9", under 200 pounds. He's playing incredibly well. And it's amazing, actually, the strike rate that they have in this low-round drafting strategy of let's get 10 draft picks all between rounds 3 and 7.
I can't wait to see what the Rams do this offseason because we were just talking about this last week. Did a video breaking down the Rams and discussing what the offseason might entail. They reverted completely back from go for it to let's go the complete other extreme and be as young as it gets. But I wonder if they've added so much youth over the last couple of years now that they're getting this younger nucleus. They're going to feel good about that and then go back to being aggressive this offseason and get those veterans in there. And I wonder how much of that strategy might coincide with the fact that the Niners look like an absolute powerhouse and have 2 more years of Brock Purdy. The poor guy can, barely make rent in the Bay Area right now. And so they have, the Niners have plenty of money to continue to spend on free agents. I wonder if the Rams go back to being crazy aggressive and say, all right, we're hitting on day 3 picks. We got Kyren Williams. We got Puka Nacua. We got Kobe Turner. We got all these 3rd to 7th rounders. We could either go with another draft class of 10 to 15, or we could start flipping picks again. They get their first round pick since 2016. We'll have more about that in the offseason. I'm just fascinated by the Rams sitting here at 7-7. You don't think they're a very good team, but
I don't think 25 teams in the NFL is here very good. They're in position. Stafford
is dealing this year.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp, now granted, there's a 62-yard busted coverage in there that was horrendous by Washington. But Cooper Kupp's starting to look more like Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
They're unlocking Demarcus Robinson as this 3rd option here. I mean, they're sneaky good here, the Rams. I just think the defense is just so hit or miss every single week.
The Demarcus Robinson thing alone would make me think that they're not a very good team.
The Chiefs could use a guy like Demarcus Robinson.
For some reason, they get in the red zone and decide now's the time to feed the ball constantly towards Demarcus Robinson, not Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. But all right. No, look, they've got some, in a weird way, this is not that dissimilar from their Stars and Scrubs Super Bowl type teams in terms of it's not like it's a very good team overall, but they're very strong in the right areas, albeit instead of Robert Woods, right? It's Puka Nacua. It's a rookie 5th round pick doing it, right? So in that way, it's the same sort of strategy. It is fascinating, though, how they what are their takeaways from the success they've had in the last couple of years of drafting? Because generally we work on this assumption that nobody is better or worse at drafting than anybody else long term, right? Or at least nobody's good at it. And the Rams have had this strategy of, okay, we're going to trade away all of our top picks to bring in established NFL stars, knowing that they will be good, and then we will just draft 10 times in the low rounds and hope that we hit enough of those to make it worth it. And they have. In fact, they've hit way more than enough of those to make it worth it. So do they use that to convince themselves that actually we're better at this than everybody else and we can just keep drafting this way and have a really good team? Or do they just sort of go, we got really lucky and now that's going to let us build the next Super Bowl team because we're only paying Puka Nacua $7 a year and, we're not spending money on all these low-round picks that we hit on.
Oh, there's a few teams that every single year I just can't wait to see what they're going to do. The Rams are up there again. Because, again, Stafford had another unbelievable game. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder, is he ever going to retire? Is he going to retire? Is he one of those guys that will retire a little bit younger than you expect? Because he's still young, but he's played a lot of football and taken a lot of hits. But if Stafford sticks around and Donald sticks around, I don't know. There's something there. That said, Washington's bad. Sam Howell didn't play well. They brought in Jacoby Brissett, who looked good after Sam Howell. If you're, without splits, not looking good for Sam Howell there, who has
really regressed.
He has
recently.
not looked great these
No.
last few weeks, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been playing as well as he did earlier in the year. In fact, the Sam Howell trajectory was pointed upwards, and it was looking reasonably encouraging for a period of this season. And ironically, he only got sacked one time yesterday. Early in the year, if he could just stop getting sacked 9 times a game, we would really be onto something with Sam Howell. Well, now he only got sacked one time, but he actually just played like crap and didn't do anything. So yeah, that's a really unfortunate thing for Washington. Obviously they're kind of be rebuilding this year with the new ownership, and they're probably going to clean house from a structural organizational point of view. If they were able to come out of the season with Sam Howell looking like he was improving and being pretty good right away, they'd be in a quite encouraging place. But actually, that's kind of going off the rails, and it looks like they might still need a new quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be in position to maybe grab QB3.
Yeah.
If they want, which will be a decision, right? Is that Jaden Daniels? Jaden Daniels wasn't in that QB3 conversation at the beginning of the year, but moved himself in with a ridiculous Heisman season.
And it always feels like that's just a worrying place to be, We have the choice of QB3.
I don't know, but in this class, it might.
No, I know, but
but
we're in this world where nobody has any idea who QB3 is at the moment. Everyone's going to make their case for a different guy, but the fact that that's where the inflection point is itself a worry, I think. We have 2 clear number 1 and number 2 guys, and then nobody has any idea who QB3 is. Now, you get your choice of who you think it is, but we know, or at least we think, there's a giant gap between 1 and 2 and 3.
Got people calling me saying I'm using statistical malpractice by saying Brock Purdy's the number 1 QB since week 10.
Yeah? Why? Because you used the arbitrary cutoff of week 10, or because you did something else wrong?
The arbitrary cutoff.
Okay.
I mean, if you do something with it, I'm trying to paint the picture that his play is starting to match the production.
Yeah. And you're doing this
Live on the air.
perfect.
Yeah. Got no more use for this game. Rams are 7-7, and that puts them as the number 7 seed right now. Don't want to play the Rams in the playoffs.
I think you probably do, actually.
Maybe you do.
Yeah.
So if the playoffs started today, they'd be going to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The
I mean, I think
playoffs
the Eagles
started.
would be comfortable with that, to be honest.
I think they would
Yeah.
as well. All right, the other 4 o'clock game before we get into Sunday Night Football, Buffalo Bills 31, Dallas Cowboys 10. Have to say, I did not see this results coming. Thought we'd have a better game. Bills move to 8-6. Cowboys fall to 10-4. I mean, obviously the biggest story about this game is James Cook going off. But not just James Cook. It was the entire Bills rushing attack. They scored 31 points, and Josh Allen completed 7 passes. As the game went on, it was like, well, they're up. The Bills are up 21-3, and Josh Allen's completed 5 passes. That whole, the balance of Josh Allen's supposed to be the guy that carries the team. He said after the game, this was like me doing a group project, and we got an A, and I didn't do any of the work. Complete opposite of the rest of the Josh Allen experience the last couple of years. Incredible effort by the Bills, their run game, and James Cook in particular.
Yeah. This was a really fascinating game where, sometimes you talk about early in the game sort of determines how the game is going to go, whether you get the stop or whether you get those 2 touchdowns like the Cardinals and all this kind of thing. Very first drive. Bills drive down, 3rd and 4, incomplete pass. Dallas stopped them in the red zone. And the drive gets extended by a roughing the passer call on Josh Allen that frankly was bullshit. And for Josh Allen now has one of the most extensive highlight reels of flopping of any NFL player in history. He's got a huge amount of them. And for a guy that is later in the game, there's a play where Josh Allen is dragging 3 different Dallas defenders on a carry. You can't be both those guys at the same time. You can't, on the one hand, drag multiple defenders for extra rushing yards, and on the other hand, somebody push me in the chest, faint backwards, swoon like you're some sort of 18th century damsel in distress. He does. He flops. The officials buy it. He goes down clutching his face mask, pointing to his head. I got hit in the face. You weren't anywhere. The guy was nowhere near your face. He pushed you in the chest, and not even egregiously late. It shouldn't have been roughing the passer. It was. It extends the drive. They score a touchdown, and that essentially determines how this game is going to start. If they have to settle for a field goal and instead, Dallas can stay where they are. Now, the Bills defense also played incredibly. Like, they were aggressive. They started to get like multiple penalties for cracking Dak Prescott in the head as he went sliding. So it was just this interesting start of the game where an egregious flop by Josh Allen extends a drive, gives them a touchdown instead of a field goal. Their defense plays incredibly aggressive and gets a bunch of legitimate penalties. And between those two things, it kind of set this game on this pathway of the Bills are going to put up some points, have some success, and Dallas couldn't match them.
I see you have breaking news that we can't talk about.
Yeah.
Great.
So you probably shouldn't bring
We'll
that up.
reveal it later. That's good. No, it's good news. It's good news. It's good stuff. Yeah. I'm on record, Sam. We should penalize flopping.
Yes.
Penalize all of it. I also think Dak Prescott, did they pull one of those late hits on him on the slides? Because they only had one penalty, Buffalo. It felt like the only way Dallas was moving the ball is if Dak Prescott slid as late as possible and induced another hit. That stuff drives me crazy too. I think it's just as bad as the flop. Waiting the last second, kind of getting in that half slide mode. Am I slide in? Am I like, what am I going to do? Am I still running? Am I slide in? Am I all the way down? Drives me crazy.
Yeah.
We didn't even get into the KZ hit earlier, thank goodness. But
That was the play Tom Brady's talking about.
yeah, again, the whole
You
point,
led your receiver into death. Your receiver almost got death.
The whole point Brady was trying to make, again, before Alex Smith went on his AFC East tirade, was that it's on the quarterback and the receiver to also protect themselves, not just the rules, not just the letter of the law. And that one more quick thing, because Cam Newton said a thing last week where he used the term game manager, and everybody attacked Cam Newton and said, "Well, these guys are better than you, Cam." Right? And so Brady says this thing. Off, you need to protect the receivers, and everybody says, "Well, you overthrew guys over the middle too." We're in this world where you can respond to the message without only attacking the messenger, and so just because Brady said we were taught to not overthrow guys over the middle and to protect them doesn't mean he didn't do it. Just because Cam said, "Hey, Dak Prescott's a game manager," I think Dak Prescott is better than Cam Newton, other than one season. I think that's true. But Cam Newton's allowed to have an opinion. We have this weird thing. You do this sometimes too. You're like, I don't want to listen to this backup quarterback because he was terrible. When it's like, it doesn't, like when somebody could look at you and be like, well, you were, a Division II All-American in the Irish Football League, and why would I listen to you? Like, we can't downplay the quality of the messenger, and that's what we focus on. Like, talk about the message, Sam.
There are times where the only times I say that is where there's a distinct lack of self-awareness when the guy is saying some things. Like he's railing against, a specific thing by a starting quarterback without being aware of like who it is and what the career was that is delivering this message. Like, for example, Alex Smith going on a tirade about how Tom Brady was in this cakewalk of a division. You have to be aware that he's Tom Brady and you're Alex Smith when you're delivering that message as you're sat there next to Teddy Bruschi and Randy Moss. Like, how does that not, you know what I mean? That's where I think there should be at least an awareness of what you're saying. That's when I tend to go off on a rant about those people. It's not that, like, I would focus on that as opposed to the message, but, like, I think you should bring that up and be aware of who you are. The Cam Newton thing, what he said was plenty dumb enough to attack without focusing on Cam Newton or his outfit or anything like that. Like, and his explanation, like he came back afterwards and gave like a further, here's my thoughts teased out a bit. And that was contradictory and ridiculous. So the message itself was plenty ridiculous enough to just focus on without even criticizing the messenger. He was trying to argue that actually being a game manager is a good thing, and Tom Brady's a great game manager, and Peyton Manning's a great game manager. But then you're like, you can't on the one hand say it's a great thing because Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and yada yada game managers. On the other hand, game changers are the ones that matter. You're like, well, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. Like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning clearly changed games as well. The whole thing was just contradictory bullshit.
I agree. I mean, the whole term game manager and system quarterback, because everybody has different interpretations of what they mean. And it's like, of course you want to run a system. Of course you want to manage the game. It's like, well, that's not what people are talking about. Like, we all have different definitions of that.
And he sort of waded into that as well, but then got himself lost when he started making the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning stuff. It's just, it was a nonsensical discussion by Cam Newton.
We're pulling it back in here.
Yes.
James Cook was unbelievable in this game again. I mean, this was like against the Chiefs. Early in the game, James Cook had an excellent game. They hit him up the seam with a touchdown, and then it seemed like they didn't go to him as much. He disappeared a little bit. But this was the game. This happens 3 or 4 times a year, where we say when the coaches draw this thing up, we're going to establish the run. We're going to run the ball. Or when people respond and it's like, you're running the ball. Why would you stop? Well, because if you just keep running the ball, sometimes you get stopped. The Bills didn't get stopped. They just kept running it at 7 yards a pop for James Cook in particular. And it started right on the first drive. I mean, they went for 7 yards a pop on the first drive. Josh Allen only had a couple completions, and they kept going. It doesn't usually work this way, where at the end of the day you have 266 yards on the ground, including kneel downs and everything. I mean, it was really more dominant than that. And Dallas had no answers for Buffalo's run game.
So let me take a stab at a bit of nuance here. So the game ends up, 31-10 or something like that? And it wasn't even that close. It's essentially a 30-point victory, right? So clearly the game was not close. However, there were a bunch of big, potentially game-swinging mistakes or freaky things or bad luck, all of which went against Dallas. So we talked early, there was that roughing the passer call that shouldn't have existed, that turned 3 into 7 points. Dallas should have had a blocked punt that could have changed the game in a huge way, right?
That was weird.
Sam Williams, was it?
Yes.
Gets completely clean up the middle and somehow jumped past the football. And not only did he not block it, but he then, because he jumped past the ball, jumped into the punter and actually turned it into a first down, right? And ends up getting roughing the kicker.
Yeah.
And instead, it could have been a defensive or a special teams touchdown for Dallas and ends up being a first down and the drive extended for Buffalo instead. Like that's about as bad a swing as you're going to get on a single play, which, I mean, that's a mistake by Dallas. So it's not like it's a bad luck play. But they essentially engineered a blocked punt, and somehow instead of a blocked punt, which could easily have been a touchdown, it ends up being a first down on the play, which resulted in a touchdown on that drive. So that's 14-0, right?
Yeah.
They could have been 7-7 on a play where the first 7 by Buffalo was a little bit lucky. So what could have been, if you take it to the extremes, could have been like 3-7 Dallas is actually 14-0 Buffalo. Later on, they get a clean peanut punch on Stephon Diggs, which they just didn't get given the fumble? How did that work?
I don't know what happened there.
They got a clean knock out of the ball and had recovered it. And I think I don't know what happened on that play, but they didn't get it anyway. So there was a bunch of little plays that went against Dallas that could have made this a much closer game than it actually was. But it doesn't change the fundamentals, which is, Dallas could not stop Buffalo's running game all game long. And the Bills' defense was hyper-aggressive and did do a really good job of stopping this Dallas offense, which had been, up until this point, very difficult to stop.
Yeah, I appreciate the nuance there because it is easy to get caught up in this. I've done this before, too, coming out of a Sunday where there's a blowout.
There you go. Fact checker Ben in on it. The official ruled that play down, and Dallas didn't look at it quickly enough to challenge.
Oh, jeez. So, yeah, I mean, where we're breaking down a blowout, and it's like, I know it feels bad for the Cowboys or it feels bad for the losing team, but literally if you just flip a couple plays, which may have been lucky, unlucky, may have been their fault, that just maybe the next time they go a little differently, it's not as close. That's not diminishing the credit that the Bills deserve here. Their defense did an outstanding job. Their coverage unit, I mean, Dak missed, 1 or 2 deep balls early, I think it was. Coverage unit, though, made everything difficult. They were working downhill, attacking, no yards after the catch.
I mean, they're
such a good job.
The Bills' coverage defenders had 10 defensive stops. So plays where they've given up a catch.
That's what I'm saying. It just felt like they were flying to the football in this game.
So plays where they've given up a catch but make a tackle either short of the first down on, third down or fourth down, or very close to the line of scrimmage, like short of a successful play on offense. So they were giving up catches but making sure they weren't going anywhere. A ton of them were like dump off, check downs to Tony Pollard. But their defense was absolutely suffocating Dallas. So even if a bunch of these plays had broken Dallas's way, I think Buffalo probably still wins the game, and maybe by a score or two, because Dallas wasn't able to stop them and they weren't able to move the ball themselves.
Dak had about 38% of his yards came after the catch. Like, they just did not. I mean, the Bills did a great job cracking down on that. So that's one thing. Dak's going to end up, he's in the middle of one of the strangest seasons of all time. If you look at his grading breakdown, he's still grading at 90 plus, and at the end of the day here, at the end of this game, he'll probably be grading in the 40s. It'll be his third game, maybe in the 30s. It'll be the third game where he grades in the 40s or lower. And it was the Niners game in week 5, it was the Cardinals game in week 3, and then this game against Buffalo. And he's still at 90 plus. I don't know if we've ever seen that in history. I don't know if fact checker Ben doesn't have time to look back to 06 for that one. But just a crazy difference in performance for Dak week to week. So Buffalo deserves credit. Prescott didn't make the throws. The one other thing here, I saw that, I don't even want to reference it. Skip. And the stupid Skip Bayless. And I still can't even believe he's a thing.
You see?
But he's throwing the Micah Parsons. He does these staged, I'm going to throw the jersey. It's not even, I only saw it because Richard Sherman.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Did you see Sherman's tweet essentially begging him to stop making his wife record these ridiculous social videos?
That's just insane.
Every one of them involves him walking into his kitchen from whatever that back room is in the doorway back there that we never see, like strutting in a peak of rage, and then doing whatever he's going to do. In this case, it's take a Micah Parsons jersey, toss it in the garbage, and then do this weird walk off like John Wayne, where he's been sitting on a horse too long. He's like, he walks really strangely.
So then it made me think, okay, let's go back and watch Micah Parsons, because Josh Allen only dropped back 21 times, whatever it was. And Micah Parsons probably ends up with 7 pressures on 21 dropbacks. Now, did he hit Allen? No sacks. He's forced multiple incompletions. The one complaint, you might say he lost contain when Allen rolled half rolled the pocket to throw to James Cook for that one touchdown pass. Parsons was unblockable again.
I don't even think
But the ball just kept coming out quickly by the Bills. That happens sometimes.
I don't even think that's a statement on Micah Parsons. I think
the Cowboys.
He's just already burned his Dak Prescott jersey and his CeeDee Lamb jersey, and this is the next Cowboys jersey he's got to throw in the bin.
I don't want to give Skip Bayless any more time.
Anyway, Richard Sherman's tweet was stop making Ernestine, however you say that, which is his wife's name, film these videos. I think it's a fair point. He absolutely should stop making the poor woman film these videos.
All right, so where does this have us now? Bills at 8-6, and they are technically the number 9 seed, Sam. They're not in the playoff picture right now. Yeah, they're not in. So there's ahead of them right now the Bengals, Colts, Texans, and then it's the Bills. They're all 8-6. They're all in the wild card mix here. The Bengals are the one team that absolutely has the tiebreaker because they won the head-to-head over the Bills. The Colts and Texans, it's all going to be based off of win percentage in conference games. But the Bills are absolutely better than their 8-6 record would show. Mm-hmm. And the big story coming out of this, of course, is the multiple-year narrative that they need to win games without just Josh Allen, like they did it in this game. It was defense. It was run game. It was James Cook.
15 pass attempts.
15 pass. Now, he ran the ball a bunch, had some scrambles, had some sneaks and the whole thing. But that has to bode well that the Bills can have this type of game, right? And win against Dallas, too, against a very good team. That's huge.
Well, and we've talked all season long about how Dallas has the best pass rush in the NFL. Well, one of the best ways of negating that is not needing to pass the ball. I mean, if you're able to run the ball as effectively as they were and rely on Josh Allen turning a few pass attempts into scrambles, they didn't expose themselves to the best pass rush in the NFL. Like you were saying, with Micah Parsons was still Micah Parsons. It's just that he didn't have 35, 40 dropbacks to tee off and go after the quarterback.
Yeah. They in their last 3 games here, Buffalo has the Easton Stick Chargers. Though they're coming off, they've got interim head coach bump.
Bump, yeah.
So you got the bump. They got the Patriots, and then they're at Miami. So Buffalo's got a road here. The at Miami game to finish the season will be interesting, but they have a chance to get back in the playoff picture, obviously. And they'll be getting pretty hyped up because they beat the Cowboys. And the shouty shows are having a ball right now, live as we speak, trashing the Cowboys. They're all trashing the Cowboys.
Yeah. Well, Skip certainly is.
It's all over for Dallas. All right, let's wrap it up with Sunday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens 23, Jacksonville Jaguars 7. Ravens move to 11-3. Sole possession of the number 1 seed in the AFC right now. Again, they control their own destiny, but they have to play the Niners and the Dolphins and the Bengals, I believe, in the last 3 weeks. Not an easy schedule here for the Ravens. Jags fall to 8-6, one of the trio of teams sitting up top the AFC South. Biggest news coming out of this game, though, a couple things. Keaton Mitchell.
Horrible injury.
Injured. He's out for the season. He was in the middle of a 8 yards per carry game and blew out his knee.
Dude, I don't remember an injury like that. He hyperextended it. He did one of those things where he sort of tripped up slightly, and you kind of do that. You're falling forward. You're trying to keep your own balance, and he just stuck out a leg in the course of sort of slightly falling forward, and it hyperextended and just shredded itself.
Yeah.
It was horrible looking.
And then after the game, Trevor Lawrence, it was announced by Doug Peterson that Trevor Lawrence has been added to the concussion protocol. Don't know when that would have happened during the game, but the Jags have to come back, and they play the Bucs next week, and now we're watching Trevor Lawrence to see if he can get out of concussion protocol within a week here. But the Ravens win 23-7. And did a really nice job defensively. Uneven game for Trevor Lawrence. Lamar Jackson with some spectacular plays, and he finishes with 97 yards on 12 carries. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on the football game?
So this was a lot of Jacksonville shooting themselves repeatedly in the foot. I think NBC flashed up a graphic at halftime that this was the most yardage any team had this season whilst not scoring in the first half. They had 180 yards or something in the first half.
Feels right.
And somehow conspired not to score, whether it was turning the ball over, or whether it was that weird halftime sequence.
4 big errors.
Yeah.
That we should highlight, right?
Go.
So 2 missed field goals. You have Trevor Lawrence just straight fumbling the ball, not forced, just dropping it.
Just lost the ball in the middle of running.
The worst part about that play, it was 3rd and long.
Yeah.
And whether he picked up 2 yards or 7 yards, they were kicking a field goal, no matter what. It was 3rd and 10 plus, I believe.
A guaranteed 3-point mistake.
3-point, right. So they're going to kick another field goal. It was the closest field goal they would have attempted in that half. 3-point mistake. He drops the ball while scrambling. And then the last one was with under a minute left, complete a big pass at about the 4 or 5 yard line. They have no timeouts left. They get tackled in bounds. They run up to the line. They have about 5 or 6 seconds left. They run up to the line. Tirico's yelling, they're going to spike it. They're going to spike it. They actually get into the gun and throw a pass. And they throw a quick pass to the flat. Parker Washington catches it, gets tackled inbounds. Time runs out in the half. Mm-hmm. They had more than 7 seconds, right? They had enough time to even, tease getting back to the line, but we knew that they were out of time. So they get 0 points there. That was a disaster.
There were 11 seconds on the clock when that play went off.
11 seconds, right? So you have 0 chance if you get tackled in bounds, but you have a chance to throw at least
2
one.
passes.
Yes. Yeah. You should throw 2 passes to the end zone.
Because it's first down. So you've got at least 2 shots at the end zone.
So they could have spiked it, taken 2 shots at the end zone, or even if they were going to run a play, when they snap it, which is fine. I don't mind the hurry up and snap it, but you have to throw that ball into the end zone.
Yeah.
You can't throw it short.
Or at the very minimum, something you guarantee is going out of bounds.
And a lot of times, I think in that hurry up situation, I think you see quarterbacks do this sometimes. They'll run up, they snap the ball, and then they'll just overthrow it out of bounds. And you waste an extra couple seconds versus the spike, but you're taking the chance that maybe the defense doesn't align quickly and you steal a touchdown.
You have, the hurry-up nature of that play does theoretically play to your advantage, particularly if you've already sort of said, which you have, this is the play we're running if we get this. You know what I mean? They have that preset, whereas the defense doesn't know what's going on. So there is an element of surprise that works in your favor, but you can't do what they did. Like, the one thing you can't do is what they did. The short inbounds that doesn't get out.
It was really bad. Jags' only touchdown was Jamal Agnew getting behind the defense for a 65-yard touchdown. That did make it 10-7 in the third quarter. Makes it seem like, hey, there's a game here. But look, the Ravens have been, Lamar Jackson, it is fascinating because when they need plays, and this is what Chris kept highlighting last night, they couldn't sack him. He throws it up, gets it to Isaiah Likely. That set up a touchdown. Really nice pass to Isaiah Likely up the seam for a 16-yard touchdown. When they needed big plays, Lamar was there. But also when they're trying to hold on to a lead, and I know they've had some of the most egregious blown leads in the NFL over the last 2 years. But Lamar's ability to just run the ball and just, pick up plays that most quarterbacks can't, whether it's on keepers or QB power or counter or whatever they're running, the creativity of the Ravens run game and the difficulty in stopping them, that's where every time the Jags got a little bit closer, the Ravens would run some clock. And I thought the Ravens also left a lot of opportunities. Like, they did a good job of moving the ball, and then they stall out. So they could have put up a lot more points as well. But they did a really nice job of at least handling the comeback by the Jags in this game.
I think there's a lot of value as well to a quarterback, even if they don't do it as a default, being able to scramble, So even when you are going to call a pass, if the pass isn't on, instead of a negative play happening, Lamar is able to turn that into something useful, right? And even if it's not scramble around behind the line of scrimmage and then find a pass, just simply being able to keep the clock moving, keep ahead of the chains, keep the drive alive by scrambling and not, this didn't work, it's an incomplete pass, That or a sack, something worse. And this isn't obviously just a Lamar Jackson specific thing, but any quarterback that's athletic and mobile enough to be able to scramble and make positive yardage, I think becomes incredibly valuable in terms of protecting a lead, because those guys can do things that other quarterbacks can't, and they don't need to be as efficient in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, you're stealing yards, man. And I thought that was a huge part of this game for the Ravens. Trevor Lawrence on the other side, really, I think I mentioned it on the preview show, how he had that game a couple weeks ago where it felt like difficulty level was high. And Stafford had this game against the Ravens where there were so many tight window throws and Stafford hit them. Lawrence, there was a lot of tight window throws that they had to make. Everything was difficult because this Ravens defense generally makes life difficult. And Lawrence missed a bunch of them. There was a point where it looked like he was shaking his arm out. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. Lawrence might be dealing with 4 different injuries right now. Honestly, he's got a groin since week 7 or 8. He's got the high ankle sprain, which is a 3 to 4 week injury. We're in week 2 of that. He's now in concussion protocol. And whatever was happening with his arm, he threw like 3 straight passes straight into the turf. Remember that happened to Josh Allen last year? He had something happen with his arm against the Jets last year where Allen just could not throw the ball. And he kind of worked through it, shook it off. And
didn't he have a UCL sprain, right?
Yeah, and then he made it worse like in that game or whatever it was.
He sprained the ligament that Brock Purdy snapped like a banjo string.
Right, the Tommy John surgery versus just a sprain. I'm an elbow sprain survivor, so it's not easy to throw through.
No?
No.
Is that why you top out at 75 now?
Oh, no, that's just age and poor conditioning.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But that's why I didn't make it out of AAA. I was on my way to the big leagues.
And then the elbow.
In 2008. Got called up in June to AAA. On my way. The Giants were calling everybody up that year, man. They were calling everybody up. In my second outing, boom, sprain.
I mean,
tried to pitch through it.
You'd already be in the Hall of Fame, but for that. Not the baseball.
Yeah, if I just, made it to San Francisco.
The Italian-American national sports, whatever the hell it is.
If I made it to the big leagues, my line would be something like 5 innings, 9 ERA, 8-9 hits. But I would have been, in the bigs.
None of that means anything to me, but cool.
It would have been bad.
Gotcha.
It would have been bad, but I would have at least made it because of the elbow sprain. So, yeah, Lawrence is dealing with all sorts of stuff. But, yeah, they needed him to play better in this game. That's my take.
No, I mean, it's a legitimate one. I think it's true.
It also makes the Trevor Lawrence experience more confusing. I know he's battling all those injuries that I mentioned, but every time the Jags play one of those games, I'm saying, okay, are they ready to get up to the elite level? And now the question is, can they even survive the Colts and the Texans now in the AFC South, especially if Lawrence is in concussion protocol, if he can't play this week with C.J. Beathard. Jags peaked at the end of the season last year. It's kind of going the other way this year.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting themselves in the foot thing was was a big problem. Like, they just put themselves too far behind in this game and weren't able to come back to any great degree. The other thing, on the broadcast, Chris was sort of saying, if I could wish them any boost, what would I give them? And he essentially wanted to give them some more oomph up front on the offensive line so that they could run the ball better, so they could do things like that. I think, honestly, both trenches, like if they could be boosted in both trenches, like that's their weakness at the moment. Josh Allen had a great game on the defensive line, which he has pretty much all season. I know he didn't have a sack, but he had 8 total pressures. Ronnie Stanley is hurt and just not playing the way Ronnie Stanley generally does. They were down both tackles at one point, the Ravens offensive line, so you'd expect Josh Allen to have a pretty good game. Trayvon Walker's okay. Like, he's making more plays now than he did before, but it's still not enough, and they don't really have any major interior pass rush presence. So they're a little bit like the Lions, actually. I've said this all season long. The Lions and the Jags are basically the same team in different conferences, but they're still just too reliant on one guy up front for pass rush, for general defensive line disruption. It's Josh Allen, and if he's not able to individually take over the game, they're probably not going to do enough to really impact the opposition. So you would want some more on that side of the ball for them on the defensive line. And I think he's right. On the offensive line, they're just not good enough yet. They've been banged up. They're, forced into the bench a bit, and they've got 3 guys in this game that are going to grade like in the 40s or the 50s, giving up a ton of pressure. And it's not as good in the run game either. So they are weak in both trenches, which is potentially enough to set them way behind in the AFC.
All right, man. Baltimore Ravens, man. They're 11-3. We got Christmas night going on against the 49ers. The last game of next weekend is Monday night, Christmas night, 8:15, Ravens 49ers, potential Super Bowl preview. We're getting some of these games late here. Some of these killer matchups here. In the Ravens' final schedule, and this is why I said Kansas City, if you're a Chiefs fan, you might have a path to the number 1 overall seed. The Ravens would have to lose twice. But they play the Niners, the Dolphins, and then the Steelers. Who the heck knows? They already lost to the Steelers because they dropped 7 passes or whatever happened, blocked punts and the whole thing. So Baltimore, they've won 4 straight. They've won 8 out of 9. Playing well. They've got different ways to win. They've been leading in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter in every game this year, Baltimore. And they've lost 3 of them somehow. But they got the Niners, Dolphins, and the Steelers. So it's a tough run here, but the Ravens control their own destiny for that number 1 seed. And I'll tell you what, that's I think that's important come playoff time. If you're trying to beat the Chiefs, Bills.
The bye is huge, right?
That's huge.
Yeah, the bye is huge. Even if I'm kind of the opinion that generally this year seeding doesn't really matter in terms of outside of the 49ers. I'm not sure there's an elite team in the league, the entire league, the AFC, the NFC, all of it.
That's fair.
But so from that point of view, like Buffalo, right? They're not even in the playoff seeding right now. And yet a game like that, they've just shown they can beat pretty much any team in the NFL and beat them handily. So does it matter if Buffalo makes it as the 7 seed or the 2 seed? No. Like either way, it's the same. The only difference is that bye week, right? In a playoff year that I think is probably going to be chaotic because all these teams are fairly evenly mixed, not having to expose yourself to that one loss is huge. We just get to sit back and chill and watch madness unfold on Wild Card Weekend while upsets happen and all sorts of stuff go crazy.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, there's a lot of the teams that have number 1 seed aspirations have huge games, including both the 49ers and the Ravens next week. So should be great. That's it, man. We finished earlier today.
Wow.
How did we do that?
We got a lot closer to. I actually, for a while, it looked like it was going to be a really early podcast, and then obviously we
play right up to the whistle.
We did what we normally do, which is extend our time and fill the space.
Well, yeah, I have nothing to say on that. It's right. We did it. All right. I got my 9:30 meeting, my weekly 9:30 meeting. I'll be on time for it this time.
Sweet.
So we got Monday Night Football tonight, Philadelphia Eagles and Seattle Seahawks. It sounds like Jalen Hurts might not play.
Yeah.
due to
So
sickness.
David Carr gets his wish.
Yes.
Marcus Mariota.
David-
And, I mean, dude, what a combination. Marcus Mariota on offense, Matt Patricia on defense. It's really what championships are made of.
Matt Patricia's calling plays for the Eagles
Apparently.
on the defensive side. And we think Geno Smith is getting the start for the Seahawks. Could still be Drew Lock, technically. We'll see what happens. But you'll be here breaking it down a little bit tomorrow, and you've got the big interview as well.
We got a really good interview tomorrow, which I think you will want to listen to. And so I'll be here with Trev breaking down Monday Night Football, and then we will pitch to our big interview. And then Wednesday, we have our Christmas extravaganza special, and we will have big news tomorrow as well that we're not allowed to break today.
Big news tomorrow. We'll
reasons.
repeat the news Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll keep going with it.
Oh, yeah.
And the Wednesday show, you're going to want to just...
We'll be repeating this news for a while
Yeah.
because of the closing dates that are shown in this email.
Long time. But Wednesday's a big one, so you're not going to want to miss the Wednesday Christmas show. Might have a couple surprises for
You
that
are
as
not.
well.
There's going to be outfits. It will be amazing.
All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more PFF NFL Podcast.